Call this meeting back to order. It's 10 minutes to 7. I'm sorry we kept you waiting. We'll start with the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have one item to report that occurred in closed session. In the matter of closed session item B3, the board approved a settlement agreement by the following roll call vote. Ayes, Vandenbos, Reed, Sharp, Colados, absent Lucky. The facts and circumstances and a copy of the settlement agreement are being withheld due to student privacy rights pursuant to 20 U.S.C. section 1232G and Education Code section 49060 et sec. May I have someone make a motion on approval of the agenda, please?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll just take it out of order. We'll see how we're doing in time. All right. We now have board president announcements, and I have one. If you're watching this meeting on TV, you're watching it on Monday, next Monday at 7 p.m., because you're watching it on RPV TV. RPV TV will be broadcasting regular recording of the Board of Education meetings on Mondays at 7. Each meeting will be rebroadcast on the following Monday, and each subsequent Monday, sounds kind of tedious, until the next regular board meeting is held and a recording is provided to RPV TV. As of November 1st, 2015, the broadcast channel will move to Cox Channel 33 and Fios Channel 38. So that's how you'll find us. We have approval of the minutes of the board policy workshop for October 12th.
I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I abstain. I'm absent is Lucky. Approval of the regular Board of Education minutes of the meeting of October 14th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And Barbara is absent. And we move on to the report of the superintendent.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to just lead right in with Dr. Bose, honoring our Teacher of the Year recipients for tonight.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Austin. And many of you in the audience have attended a great event which happens annually and is sponsored by the Palos Verdes Peninsula Rotary Club. And it's to honor the Teacher of the Year from our district at 4 different levels and other districts and private schools in the surrounding area. And we're very pleased to have our 4 honorees tonight with us today. We're going to have them come up in just a minute. The big event, sponsored by the Rotary Club, is at the Palos Verdes Golf Club on the evening of November 4th. So we'd like to begin by inviting up our lower grade elementary honoree. She teaches first grade at Rancho Vista Elementary, and we would like to start by honoring Kathy Rodriguez.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity and this lovely honor. I am humbled by it, and I thank you very much. Just to give you a little bit of background, as Mr. Bose said, I teach first grade at Rancho Vista. This is my 5th year in that grade level, and my 5th year at Rancho Vista. I was at Mata Malaga Elementary before that. This is my, I've been in the district for 11 years. And unfortunately, 7 years ago, though, I was laid off due to budget cuts and temporary contracts, but I persevered, thank goodness. And I held on and fought my way back in, and boy, am I glad that I did, because the reward is very sweet in the end, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, our honoree for upper grade elementary, teaching 4th grade also at Rancho Vista. Let's welcome Catherine Chen.
Good evening. I always write everything down, and Dr. McDonald makes fun of me sometimes, but I can't do things off the cuff very well. So I wrote my speech down. I first began teaching in Palos Verdes 16 years ago. Karen Giacone, if you know her, offered me a 4th grade position at Point Vicente right after my interview. It was my first real job interview, so I asked her if I could think about it. And of course, once I visited the school, once I visited Point Vicente and saw that from my classroom windows I could see Catalina Island at the time, how could I possibly say no? So as you all know, we have a remarkable population of students here in PV. Most teachers I know try to be experts in everything we teach, but my students show me up all the time. If I think of 3 ways to solve a math problem, my students think of 5 more ways to solve it. But honestly, many of the best parts about teaching happen outside the classroom. I love it now. I have younger siblings of former students rush up to me on the playground and say, "Mrs. Chin, my brother was in your class last year. I really hope you're my teacher next year." And I always say, "Me too, that would be awesome." And I'm not sure who your brother is, but I'm really excited to have you next year. So I get that a lot, and that's just so heartwarming. It's lovely. 3 or 4 years ago, with some encouragement from Michelle and Joan in the curriculum department, and Joanne too, I began collaborating with teachers here in their district. I started by facilitating teacher workshops and helping with our district professional development days. I was part of the math pilot program last spring and helped teachers implement the program this fall. I moved to Rancho Vista in 2014, and I don't think I've sat down once since I transferred there. Dr. McDonald and the close-knit staff there are constantly working on improving teaching practices and pushing and supporting each other to become better teachers. I've had an outstanding 15 years in the district so far, and I look forward to many more challenging and fulfilling years in the future. Thank you.
All right, our intermediate school honoree is not able to be with us this evening, but standing in for Chantel O'Laughlin, a wonderful music teacher from Palos Verdes Intermediate, is Principal Frank Califano.
Good evening, and I'm very honored to be able to represent Chantal O'Laughlin, our beloved Miss O. Unfortunately, due to a very serious medical issue, she cannot be here tonight. And to be quite honest with you, I had a list of things that I wanted to say just for those people who didn't know her to get to know her just a little bit. But I think this short story best describes Miss O. She underwent a 6.5-hour surgery on Monday. In the recovery room, they allowed her friends who were waiting to come in and, she can wake up to them. And as she popped open her eyes, the first thing she said to them was, "Oh my goodness, I forgot to order the pep band t-shirts for the kids." That's Miss O. About an hour ago, they sent me a text. In her words, she was extremely sorry that she couldn't be here tonight, but that she was gathering her strength so that she could come and be at the dinner next Thursday. That's Miss O. And, if we all know a good one, let's say it for her, strength to her, and get her back to PVIS as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, and we wish Chantel well. She's touched the lives of many of our students, and at Palos Verdes High School earlier this week, students wore a purple ribbon in honor of her. And from Palos Verdes High School, right now I'd like to bring up Mr. Lewis Harley, who teaches history and social sciences.
I just want to say a big thank you for this. This is a great honor. It's taken me 20 years of teaching to get to this, and it's been a wonderful experience. Those are 20 great years. Each year was a wonderful adventure, and it's a great honor. And I want to thank Dr. Park, who's here tonight, for his encouragement, his ongoing support. And he's so good at getting me to do stuff I really don't want to do. But these are I've taught every 8 advanced placement class, pretty much except for 1 in my department. And it's been a great experience, and I just feel very lucky to work for such a fantastic school and such a wonderful school district. And in the 20 years, I spent 10 years in Torrance Unified, and it's been so wonderful to be here in Palos Verdes. And I just want to thank everyone for this great honor. Thank you. On
behalf of the Board of Education, Dr. Austin, We thank all four of you for your continued efforts and your terrific work day in and day out with our students, and many of us look forward to seeing you next week on the 4th. Thank you.
Congratulations. It's well-deserved. We have one other. Yeah, of course.
I just wanted to say a couple things, just one thing to the teachers. Congratulations to all of you. I wish my kids would have had y'all in elementary school because he's wonderful. Mr. Harley, people might not know, he's the only, I learned this from him, the only AP Human Geography teacher in LA County. So he doesn't have colleagues to rely on. He does it all himself, and that's amazing. And Miss O has taught both my children, including the one that really cannot play an instrument at all. And what she does is she provides a home for the kids in her classroom, and I hope when she comes back to school that the kids can return the favor.
All right. We have several speakers on the next topic. I'd ask anybody else that has a card or wants to speak on the superintendent's report about the Peninsula High School football team to please drop your cards up front with Jana right now. Otherwise, I'm going to just take the cards that I have. Like we say to the student board members, after your report is done, you're welcome to leave. As much as we love your attendance, we know you have other things to do, so thank you. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the speakers now. Marta Mariola. I didn't want to mess up the middle word of the name. I apologize.
My name is Marta Mascaro-Marola. I'm a Peninsula mother of 3. 2 of them have already graduated, and I have a junior. Over the past 8 years that I can speak to, Peninsula parents have come before this board to discuss the trajectory that this district was headed in and the inequality and division that put one school at an advantage for extracurricular activities, namely sports, over the other. The reality is that it is much more difficult to be a student athlete at Peninsula High. The kids have 4, 5, and sometimes 6 classes, then their sport. They come home late. They're tired, they're hungry, and they face hours of homework to prepare for the next day. Compare that to a schedule where kids have 2 or 3 classes a day, have time in class to do homework, and the results speak for themselves. Student athletes will logically choose the easier, more manageable schedule. I can name off the top of my head a dozen families that have either opted to go to PV because academic success was more likely there, or who have transferred to PV after struggling academically at Penn, and now their students are excelling at PV, both in the classroom and on the field. 3 years ago, I met with several board members individually to voice my frustration of what I saw to be the declining spiral in the Peninsula Athletic Program and discuss some possible changes to put students at both schools on an equal playing field. At that time, all the board members that I met with told me that the #1 priority at both schools was a common bell schedule based on a modified block. A modified block with shorter classes on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and longer periods on Tuesdays and Thursdays to accommodate science labs and art, etc., is a proven successful model. I argued at the time that a common bell schedule would more than likely create borders organically. I was assured that the principals of both high schools were also in agreement. In fact, I have personally seen the binder in Principal Kress's office. Yet, in the 3 years since, the matter has never been discussed. I confronted one of the same school board members a year later to ask why this has never been discussed in one of the meetings, and I was told a couple of teachers at Peninsula High School were against it. It is difficult for me to believe that 2 district employees could be so powerful as to prohibit a discussion from taking place. In the meantime, our Penn rosters have become slimmer and slimmer. Teams that used to have 3 levels are reduced to 2, and now the forfeiture of the remaining Penn football season is the ultimate result. The low numbers in football, I believe, are only the beginning, based on the fact that football takes so much time and benefits from a large squad. But most sports at Peninsula are suffering. A few weeks ago, I attended the Penn versus PV water polo match. I watched our sad little bench of subs, 4 or 5, all the kids completely out of gas towards the end of the match, while the PV seemed to have an endless supply of fresh players. The PV varsity bench is at least 10 deeper than Penn. Our boys only lost by 4 points, and they were so thrilled by that. They were expecting to lose by 10 or more. I find that very sad. So many of our athletes don't expect to win. They just want to compete and not be humiliated. I will say again that our student athletes can only compete on level playing fields, and it is for this reason I ask you that the school board members act immediately to remedy this situation. By refusing to draw borders in the first place, and then by allowing this inequality in the academic schedule, you are responsible for this division. The decision to cancel our season is only the tip of the iceberg. Cheerleaders, song leaders, and pep squad, as well as marching band, are also impacted, and the ripple effects that follow are daunting. No student who wants to play football will attend Peninsula High School next year. Why pay all the money for camp, give up your summer, only to find that the program isn't viable? The younger boys that are currently in the program will transfer, particularly if they have any aspiration of playing in college. My son is a junior, and he is looking at a senior year without a sport he loves and feeling like it is too late in the game for him to transfer out.
Thank you. Could you kind of wrap it up?
I will wrap it up right now. Last year, 4 or 5 football players went on to play at college level, many in academically challenging, demanding schools they may have not gotten into had it not been for football. And that opportunity is lost to my son and his teammates. And because football ends, these student athletes usually move on to other sports. So wrestling, lacrosse, track and field, baseball will all be affected. And athletes will start coming. Penn cheerleaders, and pep squad, and band will not want to be in a school where the performances cannot be showcased, and school spirit and treasured high school memories will go out the window. And what is the board going to do when everyone wants to go to PV and you can't accommodate them due to space? I ask you to please look at this, and you can no longer turn a blind eye and at worst thwart efforts of concerned parents. All of the entire school district will be affected, Penn, PV, and the community at large.
Thank you. Tony Seymour.
Thanks for letting me talk tonight. Yeah, the last week has been really tough, especially on the young men represented by the group in the back. And I guess what we are all wondering, Dr. Austin, is who actually did make this decision, and why was the decision made? Because the reason that we were given basically by the press, because the principal and the AD and the football coach are not talking to people, is that the season was canceled because of fear of injury. Well, if that was true, why are they allowing the JV football team to play all year with 15 players? If there's a fear of injury with 22 active players, why isn't there a fear of injury with 15? The actual reason why the season was canceled was because an individual was tired of losing, and he decided for his future career that it would be better to have it on his resume that they quit the season because of injury versus they quit the season because they were getting their butt kicks. But the kids in the back don't care about getting their butts kicked. They really cared about being a team, competing every week, and just, representing their school. And you took that away from them. And it's really, really sad, because the lies that have been perpetrated to the media and to the community, everybody knows, 2,000 people who signed the petition knows that it's all a bunch of mistruths on why the season was canceled. And there's really no reason why these kids had to go through and are going through the situation that they are. They should have been together. They might have gotten their butts kicked by Redondo and Peninsula or PV, but I don't think anybody in this room really mattered. The important thing was that they went into the season as a team, and they should have come out of the season as a team. Thank you very much.
Marco Marola.
Hi, I'm a junior at Peninsula High School. I participated in 2 sports last year, and I plan to play 3 varsity sports this year. And you're going to hear a lot of angry people today, but I'm not going to be one of those people. You're just going to hear a very defeated person here today. Because what's happened is a lack of faith. And it's a lack of faith in us, and it's a lack of faith in our school in general. And I'm deeply hurt by the fact that there has been this lack of faith, because I can speak for the whole team when I say entering the season, none of us thought we were going to win state or CIF or even get 3rd in Bay League, but we were there and we put our whole summer into it, and then they just gave up on us. And I sat in this chair right here 6 years ago at the Lights Committee, and I believe that this is another failure on behalf of the school board and on behalf of, honestly, I don't know, but I sat right there and I was told that we were going to get lights, and I was told that Peninsula football was going to make a resurgence. The team that I knew, the team that I watched play in the 2005 season that won Bay League when I was just 7 years old. I mean, I was told that everything was going to get better. And then I had an older brother. He graduated 2 years ago, and I've watched this program decline. And I had a choice to make after the end of my 8th grade year. I knew I was going to play football, and I wasn't sure where I was going to go. And it seemed the easy way to go to Palos Verdes High School. But I went to the Peninsula Open House, and I talked to the football coach, who was new. Christensen was his first year, and he said, "This isn't the easy way out." And I really took that to heart, because it's not the easy way out. But we're still here, and we're still playing, and we're still practicing. We practice today. We practice every day. I put in probably 500 hours since June. And then they just gave up on us because it was hard. But a Peninsula football player doesn't believe that we give up when it's hard. We go into it knowing that it's hard. And that's what's really sad to me. Thank you.
Martin Rosemond.
Hello, thank you for hearing me. I am Martin Rosemond. I have a son, plays at Peninsula Varsity as a senior. Again, I'll ditto what Tony said, and Marco and Marta as well. You'll probably heard this from a lot of people. You hear it over and over again. We're very upset, disheartened. We as parents every day try to instill confidence and perseverance into our children, and sending them to a school, whether it's Peninsula or Palos Verdes or wherever. We're entrusting in you and the administration of the school to also back us up and instill that confidence and perseverance. And what you guys did, and what was allowed to happen at Peninsula, was you took that away, and you showed them that they shouldn't have confidence in themselves, and they shouldn't persevere. And it's something like safety was brought up, that it was an issue on safety. You got to let the kids finish. 3 games left. What is that going to show these kids? Luckily, they do have us, and we're able to tell them that is not the way to be. You should tough it out. You should persevere. You should fight through adversity. But as the board, I think you guys should do your due diligence to find out what really happened and do something about it. Because the senior kids, they're done. They're going to go off to college and do whatever they have to do. But what about the juniors? What about the sophomores? What about the freshmen? What about the 8th graders that are going to Merrill West or Ridgecrest or some of the other schools? What are you guys going to do with them? Because they also have a future somehow, hopefully in this district. And if you guys don't do your due diligence to find out who is actually accountable for this and do something about it, it's a sad, sad day here in this, this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Marissa Hewitt.
Hi, I'm Marissa. I actually coach at Palos Verdes High School. I'm the varsity girls lacrosse coach. This will be my 12th season, and I'm just here to speak on behalf of the fact that I think that, excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold, that the decision to cancel the Peninsula football team has certainly had effects at PV High as well. I think you heard from the teachers who received Teacher of the Year the words perseverance and that a lot of the lessons, the most important lessons, happen outside of the classroom. And I think that that, of course, is why they're probably very, very good at their jobs and why they're winning these awards. Everybody who coaches believes that. They're certainly not getting paid a lot of money to do what they do every day. And as the parents have already indicated, giving their kids the opportunity to be on a team and to compete is incredibly important. And I happen to be with a lot of fellow coaches at both schools when the announcement was first made, and I can tell you firsthand that it is pretty alarming as a staff member that a decision like this could happen with, you know, the little information I've been able to find, very little conference between any of the major players involved. And I think that that's a major problem. And I coach a sport that struggles with attendance, and on a year-to-year basis, we don't know how many girls we're going to have. And on a year-to-year basis, we don't know if we'll have a JV team, and that's something that we have been very careful to make sure that we keep for this exact reason, for fear of the fact that the school or the administration or someone would come in and say, especially in this era of budget cuts, that if we couldn't hit a certain number, that they were going to eliminate that program and that it would be very difficult to get it back. And I think that this is just another indication that everyone really needs to be on alert and kind of take care of their own program at both schools, and that in the absence of really any dialogue here, you know, the staff at both schools have no reassurance that at any moment their programs could be clipped for what amounts to any reason. Because at this point and in this day and age, especially at PV High, we're lucky enough we participate in that pilot program. All of our kids get tested cognitively on the computer at the beginning and end of every season, specifically with regards to concussions. But concussions and all of this, the injury talk, is not specific to football. As anyone who plays soccer or water polo or baseball or softball or lacrosse knows, that can happen anywhere. And so to have such a vague definition of reasoning why the team was canceled so late in a season is pretty scary for all coaches in the entire district. And I urge somebody to come forward and open up a dialogue to at least get a conversation going so people can start to understand what really went into this, and that there's not a slippery slope of just being able to invent any reason at any moment to start cutting extracurricular activities, whether they're sports or other things. Thank you.
Gina McGinnis.
Hi, I have 6 children. I have had 3 who have graduated from Peninsula High School. I have 2 who attend Peninsula High School right now, and I have 1 more who is supposed to attend the school next year. I have been suffering through the football program at Peninsula for a long time. My oldest son, who's 22, graduated from Peninsula in 2011, was here during the Ruber years, the Boyd years, and the lack of any, it did not appear as though there was anyone who cared about the football program when he was there. Then we get a new coach, and supposedly there's going to be a resurgence, but it didn't really seem like there's ever been anyone who actually cared about a football program staying at Peninsula High School. When my son made a decision, he's a sophomore there now, he made the varsity team as a starter, and now he has the future of, is there going to be a football program? No one will discuss it. The football coach is not telling the kids anything. No one's talking about what exactly they're going to do to continue a football program there. When you have open borders and they can choose a high school to go to, who would choose to go to Peninsula High School when they know that no one there cares about football? How can you keep an athletic director at a school with he's there when the football program completely collapses like that, considering all the other issues we've had over numerous years with him, not doing anything about numerous sports at that school? I think there needs to be, these kids need to know what is going to happen going forward. Are we going to have the same coach? Are we going to even have a football program next year? My son doesn't want to transfer to Palos Verdes High School. He's my 5th child whose siblings have all gone to Peninsula High School. He loves football, but he also loves Peninsula High School. And now he's supposed to just switch to the other high school where all of his friends are at Peninsula? That's not a choice for him. So instead, he stays at a school where his passion, football, is gone. My daughter, who's an 8th grader, she's a cheerleader. And I know a lot of people don't consider that in sport and don't think it's important, but it is her passion, and she's very good at it. But she's being teased at Pop Warner football because she's talking about going to Peninsula High School. Why would she go there when there won't even be a football team? You need to look into what is happening and why. What is going to be done? What steps are going to be taken from this day forward that's going to ensure that there's going to be this great resurgence? We get a newsletter from the principal that, oh, they're going to have a resurgence of football, and if anybody interested in coming out for football should let the coach know. There needs to be more than that. There needs to be a plan, and we need to know what it is. We need to know who's going to be leading this, because it doesn't look like there's any football leadership there right now. Thank you.
Alex Rosamond.
Hi, I'm a senior for the football team. Disappointment is a big word that me and my teammates have used throughout this whole situation because, we've put our blood, sweat, and tears 4 straight years, and all we wanted to do was play our rivalry PV game, and we can't do that anymore. It's really disheartening because I feel like I've been cheated out of those last games. I feel like the coach and the administration didn't really fight hard enough for us because it's like we played 7 straight games and no word of safety or anything like that, and all of a sudden, just out of the blue, it's just your season's done. That doesn't sit well with me. It's really tough because the lessons that you're teaching some of the kids now are saying that it's okay to quit, when things get tough. And I don't think that's a good lesson for anyone to have to be taught. I just don't feel like this was handled right at all. And I feel that because no one's speaking about it to the football team or, anyone's not giving a exact reason on what happened, it's disappointing because it should have been handled a lot better, and don't think it's right. Thank you.
Thank you. AJ Seymour.
Hi, I'm a senior football player. Throughout all of this, I think that me and all the players, we've been very disappointed and upset. But personally, the thing with me was I was most confused why the research wasn't done about all this. I think that it was clear that Coach Christensen didn't really want to coach anymore. He told everyone that we had 8 seniors while we had 13. He said we had 8 players going both ways or playing offense and defense while we had 5. He said we started the season with 27 players, but we started with 25. Last year, we actually had 3 times more injuries than we did this year. I think that if he cared about at least trying to save our program or doing something about it, that he would be here right now. I'm upset that no one in the administration or school board seem to care or do anything about it. I hope they do now because it really wasn't fair to us having our season cut short. And he quit on us, and that's something our parents have always taught us not to do. He made us look like quitters, but that's not the way we wanted to go out. We wanted to finish our season, and we aren't quitters. So I just hope we can do something about that. Thank you.
Before Dr. Austin makes his report, I wanted to say 2 things. One, Michael, this would be a great time if you have things to, I'm not asking you to talk now, but as we have a discussion about this subject, if you have perspective at all that you want to share with us on this topic, that'd be great because you're in the school. The second thing is, I had 3 kids that went to Peninsula, and I want to compliment everybody who came and spoke to us. I know it's a very emotional issue. We have a lot of board meetings with many emotional issues, and rarely do we have them presented in such a factual, unemotional, obviously you're feeling strong emotions, but you're not throwing it in our faces. And that's really greatly appreciated. And in particular, the three Peninsula High School students that spoke to us, frankly, having had 3 graduates at school, I don't expect anything less from you guys. But you guys, that's exactly the way I expect a Peninsula High School soon-to-be graduate to behave, and you should be congratulated for it. So thank you.
Well, I'd like to echo that to start. It's a hard one. I didn't know where exactly I wanted to go with this report, but I can tell you just sitting here, it's emotional for me personally. I do want to share just a quick background, and I'm going to address where the decision came from and who was part of that and the reasons, and then talk a little bit about the future. I think the emotional part is because the students, and by the way, the parents were great too, but the students, I couldn't look at them without seeing Chula Vista High School letterman's jacket, something, I get it, what it means to put the jacket on. I played football through high school and college. I was captain of my high school and college team, and ended my career in an NFL combine. So I got to go right up to the edge. And I think about those times all the time. In fact, I was in closed session and got a text message from somebody I haven't heard from in 15 years, and he was our running back on my high school football team. That's forever. One comment I heard tonight is that you came in as a team, you wanted to leave as a team. I would say leave as a team. Regardless of this, you're going to be a team beyond tonight. Okay, so I would just offer that. I went into teaching because I wanted to be, my parents were blue collar. No one in my family went to college, but my coaches did. And they were teachers and coaches. I wanted to be just like them. And that's the whole reason I went into teaching and coaching. And if you read my dissertation, you'd be, first of all, about the only person to have ever read it. But it's dedicated to my high school football coach. And it sits on my shelf, and when it pops in, I'll show it to you. That's how important that was in my own life. And I came from a district with 6 high schools where I oversaw athletics for the entire district. And it's been a part of my life forever. First of all, this was not a board decision. It's a staff decision. The board has authority in a lot of places, and there are times when we wait and discuss and vote, and then there are times when we do not, and that authority is given to staff. So this was a staff decision. I think, and it's hard. I took notes on what people were saying. I think that there were signs. I think that there were signs that it was going this direction as far back as last year, and some of those signs have been quoted in papers with quotes from the coaches back as far as last year and even this year. So I wouldn't say that there were no signs. I would say it was not clearly communicated to parents and kids that if X happens, Y could happen. I think that was definitely a gap. The problem was by the time we got everybody in the room together, it had reached such a critical point that the options were dramatically limited. Ultimately, it was no one person's decision. It was a group decision. The group, and I'm going to just tell you who was in the room, the head football coach, our athletic director, a principal, 2 assistant principals, activities director, and me. We also had statements and personal phone calls. I've known the CIF Commissioner, Rob Wygod, for more than a decade, personally called him, as well as his contact with the school site. and ultimately also even had a statement and a recommendation from former principal Kelly Johnson. So he'd given me permission to read that tonight. I'm going to choose not to right now. And it started like this. I'm paraphrasing. We looked around the room and said, does everyone in this room understand what we're even talking about? This is a big, big deal. This has impacts beyond football. This has impacts in every way that something can impact a school. This impacts it. I'm biased, but I've also been a high school principal for 11 years, so I'm going to say nothing impacts a culture of a school more than football and band. Those two things, if those two things are in great shape, culture of schools goes right along with it. So to end the season was, that was the toughest decision I've ever even been a part of. Saying that, you also cannot look around the room when the head football coach, the athletic director, the principal, 2 assistant principals look you in the face and say, we understand this and it is no longer safe to go forward. The counter argument would be to ignore each of their professional opinions closest to the athletes. That was not an option. We discussed combining the teams, the JV and the varsity, as some schools have done. In the coach's assessment, that was not an option. While I have attended Peninsula High School football games, and I do have my own opinions, you don't want the superintendent evaluating your athletic programs to decide who plays, who doesn't play, where, all those kinds of things. That is not a good place to be. So ultimately, who made the decision? I just told you, that entire group, and I am part of it. We heard some good questions about the future of the program, and with apologies to our seniors, the future begins starting next week. The program, as I see it, and I've talked extensively with Ms. Kress, is in need of a reset. A reset does not mean a do-over. It is not trivializing what happens. A reset means a complete reset. Unparalleled focus, concrete measurable goals, a 3-year plan or more with involvement from all stakeholders, everything that you're talking about, wanting to be involved with the future of the football program, the planning needs to be done together. For those who have lost faith in those charged with maintaining these programs, it's going to be a process to rebuild it. And for some of you, that may be impossible. I understand that. On my end, along with Ms. Kress, I know that she is committed to this. This will receive my personal attention, not just in updates, but in hands-on attention. And despite the disappointment, I need to say, being a person that was in the room was full of caring adults that were acting with the best information they had, with the best intentions of students. If I was a 17-year-old senior, I would think that those adults failed me too. I understand that fully. But I'm not a 17-year-old student anymore. And we don't have the luxury of saying that we can put kids out there if everyone in the room believes that it's no longer safe. And I'm not asking for agreement. You asked where the decision came from, I'm answering it. That is the best we have right this minute. And for some of you, that's probably not good enough, but it's the most honest answer I have for you. Yeah, I'd like to express our empathy. Feel terrible that we're at where we're at. We have a game this week, and I think we're beyond that.
No. We don't work like this. We don't work like this. I'm just going to recess the meeting if I need to. The whole...
This isn't how we work.
This isn't how we work. Okay. We're recessed. I apologize for recessing the meeting for a minute, but the alternative was me getting upset, which is not the appropriate way to handle that. The way we said it, I asked for this item to be on the agenda so that we'd have the ability for the public to speak, and then we could respond with answering the questions that the public raised. May not have answered them completely, may not have given the answer everybody wanted, but it's not a bit. This is the board meetings are not set up as a back and forth. The board meeting is set up, and it's the way every public meeting works, unless it's a workshop. It's set up so that the public makes comments, the board or the administration or both can respond, and we move on. It's not a give and take back and forth. I will put this on the next board meeting, or you'll have the ability at the next board meeting to come and speak on a non-agenda item, and again, we'll try to address whatever issues. I personally thought that 2 or 3 of the members brought up points that I hadn't even considered, and I appreciate that. And I'm especially disappointed if the one high school speaker who mentioned numbers which are different than what the coach was saying were the numbers, if he's accurate, and I have no reason to doubt that the high school student is not accurate, he's on the team, that's very disappointing. Anyway, we'll move on to the next item, which is reports of board members.
Before you move on, Larry, actually, can we follow up on some of the things out there?
Yeah, please do.
Go ahead, why don't you go, Linda, first?
So this is actually something I've spent a lot of time on over the last week. I'd echo what Larry said, and Michael, if you have anything you want to say, but I don't want to put you on the spot. But that's what you want. That's what I've done this week, is talk to students at both schools and talk to parents and get yelled at a lot, and it's just part of how you learn what goes on. I even spoke to, I'll be honest, a candidate running against me for the school board next week. We had a great conversation, and I learned a lot by talking with her about what was going on. I think a couple things I would say is that what Mrs. Hewitt said, the lacrosse coach, that she has to work really hard to keep her roster numbers up. I haven't seen any evidence that Coach Christensen did that at all in any way, and that's upsetting to me. I've worked in college sports for a long time. I've worked in college sports where the rosters were really small, where Division I teams had a complete roster of walk-ons. And so I know, I haven't seen any evidence from any students at Peninsula that he went out and actively did that last spring, last year, and even into the season. Did he go out to the student body? Did he try to find players that could play? If he did, fine. I just haven't seen any evidence of that. I hope that something can be salvaged for the kids, and I know Mrs. Kress is doing a great job. I'm not second-guessing any decision she would ever make, ever. But I feel like, honestly, I feel like the coach, when Alex said that he didn't fight for us, that's upsetting to me, because I feel like any teacher and any coach, if any activity in our school district, and I'm getting emotional talking about this, when a student says that, then we failed that student. And I just feel horrible that this happened, and I hope what happens with the plan, I hope that comes back, that we can be updated on so that we can keep abreast of what's going on going forward, whether I'm here or whoever's on the board is here. Because I think it's important, it's a great lesson for our kids, and it's important going forward that if there's maybe another sport and another activity in another situation that's not doing well, that we can really, everyone knows to keep up on that so that we fix a problem proactively instead of, at the end of the day, have to make a bad decision. Or not a bad decision, but a decision we don't want to have to make. Sure.
Tony?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate they're not here. I wanted to thank again Marco and Alex and AJ. There were a lot of reactions from this decision that weren't nearly as eloquent and mature as those 3 gentlemen. And it's important because I think it's a moment where everybody, including the adults in the room, can learn from the students. I am very curious. I also think the adults that pulled the cards in the time that was requested did a really good job, too, of raising some issues I hadn't thought about, how modified block or the bell schedule could impact sports or extracurricular. I think that's an interesting area to look into. We know we struggle not just with athletics, but with other programs where we not only have students going from Penn to PV, but we have students going from PV to Penn. So I would be interested in next steps in terms of, I don't want to call it an investigation, but what can we learn from this? What do we learn from it? What are our next steps? Do we have the sort of relationships with things like Pop Warner? Both my brothers have coached football for decades. What are those things that we're doing to create a viable, sustainable program? And not just football also. I think it's important to take this moment to also say, hey, maybe we need to really look at all of our programs and see if there's a sustainability pattern there so that we don't have similar situations in other sports. And I will leave it at that. I will say, I mean, it obviously is very disappointing. I think one thing that wasn't mentioned for someone who played football and others that are around football, unlike soccer and volleyball and baseball, this is it. There's no club, there's no other opportunity to compete on a weekly basis. High school is it. So I feel especially for them.
I guess I'll play the I've been around here a long time card. But around 1999, 2000, I'm not sure exactly the year, when Chris Bowles was appointed to be the principal of PV High when the high school was going to be reopened. I was asked by the superintendent at that time, Ira Tobin, to be part of a visioning group of if we build it, will they come, was kind of our charge, because of the successes that Peninsula had had as the only game in town for 10 years. If we opened up this second school, was it going to have a rich program enough to draw students to come to this new school? And the reflections I've had in the past week and a half since this news came out was a concern that the committee had toward the whole of the peninsula, and that was one of equity of opportunity. Our focus at that time was equity of opportunity. It was what's going to be a smaller campus. Will a student who graduates from PV High have the same kind of opportunities as the larger campus of Peninsula? So this kind of had me flying kind of at 30,000 feet the last week and a half, recalling that concern that the committee had toward just one campus, and now we're looking at it as equity of opportunity for all of our high school students in the district. So, you know, this is an issue bigger than just a football program. It's something that, as Tony pointed out, we have people flowing, students flowing between campuses because of some kind of opportunity perceived at one that the other doesn't have. So that's kind of where I am with that. I'm also the father of two Peninsula High graduates who, in their respective cities of Athens, Georgia, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, were a bit disappointed to learn this. So, you know, there's a bit of Panther in me that also is sad about it. So.
Okay. Thank you. Michael.
So that was a lot to take in all at once, and I'm still kind of thinking about it, so I have nothing to say on that specific issue right now. So since I was here last, which was the end of September, a lot has been going on at Peninsula, as usual. We had our Anatomy of Grey production put on by the drama department, and in addition to that, the drama department put on their annual D-Task performance. I'm not exactly sure what that stands for, but it's a chance for all the English classes to go down and watch some of their fellow friends put on some skits that they've come up with. And I don't usually watch plays or drama performances that often, but I actually found it really interesting. And there were so many students that I was so surprised. I never even knew that they were in drama, and they were so good. And that just goes to show the incredible diversity at Peninsula with the student body. And that's something I just really like about the school. We had our annual Sketchers Walk on October 25th, and leading up to that, there was kind of the incentive for students to sign up. The faculty would camp out on the roof and then be handed out donuts in the morning, and that was a lot of fun. I know Mrs. Kress kept sending out emails with how many people had signed up, trying to get us to the next level to put the next person on the roof, and that was a lot of fun to watch. We officially had our SMIRT building opened, which all the Panthers have had a long time to watch the construction process, and I don't have any classes in there this year, but I have some friends that do a lot of classes with Mr. Tweet and stuff, and I know that they're really excited for that. And in addition, when that opened, we had Dr. Michael, I'm going to butcher this last name, Massimino, the astronaut. He's also a professor at Columbia University, come and speak to us. And a lot of the science classes got to go. I got to go. And that was really interesting. Something I've always wanted to be. Probably won't ever pursue it. But I really love space. And just hearing someone who's actually been there, that was just really cool for me to hear. A really fun thing that ASB put on was, because our CAST results were so great at Peninsula High School this year, they had cake for everyone laid out all around the school. So we came out of fourth period, and everywhere you looked, there were just pieces of cake. And you could go around and just get as many pieces as you want. And that was really fun for all of us. We had our Club Rush, which is a chance for students to kind of get involved in an organization, or not specifically an organization, but just an on-campus group where they can feel more at home. You go around, you sign up for all these clubs, you find out your friends are running a certain club, and people could try to like bribe you with candy too. That's always fun. We had our PSAT on October 7th. Now, I didn't take it this year, but my little sister did, and it was different than it had been in the past. In the past, you took it on Saturday, but this year, I think the College Board only decided to offer it on Wednesday, and so Peninsula switched over to having it on Wednesday. And I obviously enjoyed the super, super late start, but I think my sister also enjoyed not having to come and test on a weekend, especially when she's a sophomore and it doesn't really mean anything. It's just kind of to gauge where she's at. So I do like that transition. Our leadership at Peninsula High School was given the Golden Bell Award, which is amazing. I know we've been talking about it for years. I was on ASB 2 years ago and last year, and we had been talking about it, what we can do to get to that caliber where we can receive that award. And I'm just so happy that Peninsula and the great leadership department we have finally received it. This week is homecoming week. We came to school and it was just decked out in like American. It's called American Road Trip, and each quad is a different part of America. So I think there's the New Orleans quad, the New York quad, Santa Monica, Aspen, and Texas. And just walking around all your classes, it's so fun. We're so thankful to ASB, who spent their entire weekend just setting up and working hard to make this great for all the Panthers. Today at lunch, we had a surprise performance by all the teachers. They started dancing in the middle of our class competition, and that was really fun. It just brightened the mood at Peninsula. And then on Friday, the day I'm looking forward to, we have our last football game, so our homecoming football game, we have our homecoming carnival, and then on top of that we have our dance, which, depending on what ASB chooses, that could be our last high school kind of informal dance, so I'm looking forward to that as well. And that is all I have for tonight.
Thank you.
Michael, congratulations. I know we're all co-presidents of the Michael McFarland fan club, but congratulations on your Samsung scholarship.
Oh, thank you.
That's an amazing honor, and we're all very proud of you once again.
Thank you.
Stop winning everything because you're hogging it for everybody else.
Do you want to continue with your board report? That's next. Do you have anything?
I'll do the technology.
Do you want me to do it? Okay. Okay, the Technology Advisory Committee met in this room last Thursday, where I'll briefly touch on the highlights of the issues. We talked about student privacy, about using E-rate funding to upgrade our Wi-Fi capability. Of course, we highlighted, as we did at our last board meeting, the new website that the district has. There is a pilot project that the district may be working on between Microsoft and Aries to integrate elements of Office 365 with our student information system. Excuse me. Trent touched on an old topic that's been around since even before I was on the board, when I was with the Ed Foundation, and that is, what's our base technology standards? What do we need to have in each classroom and have equity in that technology throughout the district? We talked some about school websites and the need to have uniformity and have them consistent. So parents are capable of navigating. And then finally, we talked about a discussion that's kind of a future goal, and that's bringing to the district a learning management system and to have a better experience with teachers, students, and parents. I found, since I don't have a student in the district, that one student may be directed to 2 or 3 or more websites as far as keeping up with class material and things like that. And we're moving towards something being more consistent, and the target is to implement that by the next academic year. Linda, have I left anything out? And we did a group activity to kind of brainstorm. Linda and I played good board members, and we observed and let the brain power. So, Trent, can you think of anything else I left out?
No, I think you covered everything.
Well, you made real good notes to help me. Thank you. All right, and that's it, and I have nothing else to report.
Yeah, I don't have anything to report on the use of school facilities board subcommittee, because much of the work we've been doing the past year is actually on the agenda tonight. I would just like to echo, both for Malcolm and Linda and then for Trent, that anything we can do in the subcommittee to work with staff and faculty to streamline the sites in which our students and families are supposed to use, I would be very, I would appreciate.
Linda?
I just have one quick thing. Last night I attended an event. It's kind of an emotional week, but I attended an event, but drug alcohol awareness event at Palos Verdes High School, and I just want to throw a couple ideas out there that have been talked about by staff and parents and people in the community. The first is the idea of a voluntary drug testing program for high school kids and extracurricular activities. It's something that's being talked about, and if anyone in the community has ideas about that and wants to get involved in the conversation, I think the time is right for that. It's definitely something that if you're a parent and you don't want that for your kid, you want to think about why. And maybe you have reasons why, but I think it's something that could be talked about. The other is something that a gentleman brought to me, and that's the idea that's popular in a lot of communities now as a social host ordinance, where it wouldn't be a school district thing, but it would be something that our 4 cities would do, and we could give them a nudge in that direction if we wanted to, where if families or homes are providing alcohol to minors, that they could be fined as a civil ordinance. It's popular up in the Bay Area. It's popular, and it's apparently been enacted in Manhattan Beach with, Detective Reed said, with moderate success, but it's been more popular and successful communities up in the Bay Area. So it's just something for our community to think about going forward.
Thank you. We don't have any speakers on non-agenda items, but if anyone else has a card or would like to speak on any of the other topics on the agenda, please drop your card up to Jana now. And we'll move on to, I'm going to if, with the board's permission, I'm going to take item O out of order.
Sure.
And Lydia, I guess that's probably your presentation.
Turn this on.
Am I wrong?
I believe the one that you want to take out of order was N2. Is that correct, Lydia? N2. N2, our attorney's here to speak to the fee schedule.
I thought our attorney's here to speak to
She
the
can speak
playgrounds
to
and.
she can speak to a plethora of things, but
Oh,
but
okay.
really she is here to speak to the fee
Talk
schedule.
about the football program?
I'm sure she does not want to address the football program.
Okay, so
N2 would be if we,
This is the school fees.
yes,
Okay.
if we'd like to move that forward,
Then
that is
I
the item.
apologize, I misunderstood.
That's okay.
But we're okay with N2.
Okay, so if anyone's okay with N2, then we'll skip to N2.
Good evening. Tonight I'd like to introduce to you Sue Ann Evans. She's with the law firm of Dennis, Woolery and Kelly. And she's joining us here tonight for the first time. We have been, when I say we, I mean myself, Chris, Deirdre, we've been working with one of the attorneys from the firm, Jessica Johnson, and she has been helping us revise Board Policy 1330, AR 1330, the terms of use, the fees, and the application. And they've really been really helpful for us in taking that step to calculate direct costs, and provided a template for us to use. And in your folders, you actually have a revised spreadsheet and revised fee schedule. We've been fine-tuning it over the last couple days, even more. And so what I'd like to do is ask Sue Ann if she can talk a little bit about the process we've been through, and then we can go through the board policy and see if there's any other comments or any items that we want to discuss in more detail.
Thank you. Board President, members of the board, superintendent, and staff, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and to work with you for the first time on an important issue. It is, and I was so glad IT was here because he had to tell me to push the button to make it work. So thank you. But I will speak up if you can't hear me. There we go. So we're here to talk about the Civic Center Act policy. This is an update of your policy. It was amended in 2012, and last year you did some work on that policy and amended it. But since that time, that was May of last year, since that time the State Board of Education has adopted regulations to address the expanded definition of direct costs. You now have more ability to, a greater ability to recover the costs associated with Civic Center use. There's what we've had historically, the operational direct costs, that's the labor, supplies, utilities, equipment, cost of administering the Civic Center Act. And what is new is the capital direct costs, which is a prorated share of the cost to repair, restore, refurbish, or replace the facility. And the template that we've been working with, in the tiny little print on there, hopefully you're able, no, you couldn't make it out. Well, that is all designed to allow the district to collect the information, input it into the spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet does the work of the regulations to calculate what is ultimately an hourly rate for the use of district facilities. So now there is a new fee schedule, but again, it's continuing to be updated as recently as this afternoon. Changes were being made. And this is, of course, the first reading, so you'll have another opportunity to see the schedule in its complete form. So in addition to working with the staff on the formula, we've been working with them to gather the kind of information they need to input into the template and come up with that hourly rate. For the operational costs, staff has gathered salary information. They've looked to the accounting records for supplies, equipment, and historical costs associated with those things, as well as utilities. And then for the capital direct costs, what the regulation calls for is estimates of these kinds of costs, because they're not very straightforward, frankly. But what we did was gather information about the cost of recent construction projects within the district, the Peninsula Pool, adjusted the cost for inflation. We also provided the district with some construction cost information from other districts across the state to help estimate a cost of construction per foot, so that they could, again, sort of estimate what the capital direct costs would be. And then in addition to that, there's looking into the historical information to determine what is the proportionate share or time that the facilities are being used by Civic Center Act users, as opposed to the district using them for their own programs. And you will see we've come up with all of that led to, in fact, an hourly rate. And we also worked on the board policy, primarily to update it to incorporate these new definitions and these new fees, to clarify priority of use, and to be clear that anybody who's going to be using it, all uses really need to be in the best interests of the district and staff and students. I think that is, we also included in the policy, and this is again part of the new regulations, to ensure that there's an annual update of the fees. So this will be an annual process for your staff. We also updated the application and the use agreement. It looks quite different than what you've had historically, but it's really been a bit of rearranging. So the intent is to streamline that process, have the application and the use agreement really all together, so that it's not so complicated to be looking through policies and then figuring out what's in the use agreement that's not in the policies. Those have all been incorporated into the draft use agreement that you have.
So can I just speak to the fee schedule development chart? I just want to commend you and thank you and everybody on your staff as well, Lydia, for we've been at this for about a year and a half, trying to figure out literally how do we mathematically, financially calculate what an hourly charge might look like. And I think it's important to note that we've kind of gone up and down the state of California, and really nobody has, from what I've seen, developed something this comprehensive. So while there's a lot of things to talk about on the policy and how we operationalize the policies, the fact that we now have both a mathematical equation and a template, so as we build a new turf field or as we resurface something, that we can literally plug in our cost and then figure out what is the fair hourly charge that we should be working with. We just haven't had this tool, and frankly, my hunch is now all of our surrounding districts are probably going to be banging on our door to get a copy of it, because they frankly have just been estimating without using this kind of formula. So while there's still a lot to figure out, I just want to really thank you, and this has moved us light years ahead of kind of where we were in our ability to kind of really collect what we believe is a fair hourly charge for the use of our facilities when necessary. So thank you for that.
Any other questions?
Were you going to say something? Okay. The attachment that is our current board policy in AR, I'm sorry, I'm just now recognizing that I don't recognize that one as being the most current one. Is that our most current, Jen? Because it's only because that most of our policies, all of our policies have a approval date, and this doesn't have one.
Are you talking about Exhibit A, Malcolm? Or are you
I'm talking about Exhibit A, yeah.
to show where we were, right?
Where we were. Okay. I got you. I see where my mistake is. Thank you.
I could
for
be
pointing-
wrong. That's
No,
why-
thank you. It's the revised one. I thought, I said, this looks awfully strange. Sorry, wrong click, bad eyes. Sorry, I'm sorry,
Now,
everybody.
there's a lot of strike-throughs,
Yeah.
there's a lot of.
I see it now,
Red
Lydia.
underlines.
My-
There's a lot of changes, and even after completing this, talking to Larry, there's still a few more small changes that we would be making. And I'll, if you don't mind, I'll walk you through some of them so that you can see what they are. And if you look at the AR, for example, which is Exhibit C and is page 1 of 9, the last red underline in that first paragraph reads, "To complete, sign, and submit the following." We're going to make a change to that that says, "To complete, sign, and/or submit the following." So there's a lot of little fine-tuning like that we're still doing, that when we come back for the second reading, if the board should approve this tonight as the first reading, what we'll do is we'll clean all of this up so that it'll be a clean copy, and then the only red line that you'll see are the small minor changes that we'll make. Another one that I want to bring to your attention is on it is on the terms and agreement, and there are actually 2 sections, and in here it would be on page, it's Exhibit D, and it would be, hang on, I'm sorry.
Is it the insurance?
Drones.
Drones.
It's on page, did you find it?
9 of 14.
9 of 14, thank you. Yeah, number 8, where it says running of model cars or flying of model planes or drones. It is in that one. Okay, it is there, okay. We had a little mix-up in the copies, and in mine, it's not there, but it is here. Okay, so that would have been one of the small changes, so drones is in there. And Larry, the insurance, did you want to bring that one up? Is that the one?
I'll go ahead and just ask the question unless you already looked at it. So I have a question on the insurance. The insurance is kind of a standard language. You have to have $1 million worth of insurance. But typically, insurance will have restrictions about the quality of insurer, because this basically doesn't say anything to the, just says you have to have it. Doesn't say offshore, onshore.
That's right.
I mean, is that because the state law requires us to be this broad in what we accept as insurance?
No, it does not. You are free to include additional language to have it be to your approval, that it's an insurance.
I mean, typically,
or
you see it one of
A-rated
2
or one of
ways.
those,
It'll
yeah.
either be rated best A something, another with some minimum level, usually as, a domestic, not an offshore, or you can just say simply with reasonable approval. I mean, it seems to me you'd rather have an objective standard. That's typically the way you see these. So I would encourage you to maybe look
Okay.
at some draft language there.
Sure, we'll go ahead and do that. And other than that, I want to bring to your attention the application. That's been revised quite a bit too. And on, it's Exhibit E, and it is page 3 of 4. There is now going to be a range of a drama director and technology supervisor, where what we're going to do is, it is on the application, but what we're also going to do is we're going to add it to the bottom of the fee schedule, so that when someone looks at our policy, it won't be a surprise to them, because right now they're digging through pages and pages and pages before they find that. So we're going to also move that to the front of the fee schedule so it is right there and they can see it right away. So that's another change that we're going to make for the next time.
And then the last comment, I mean, I know that the spreadsheet has had a bunch of changes. I haven't digested all of them from the last iteration. There are a few things that probably still are inconsistent. So when you do the next iteration before the meeting or whatever, I'd encourage this, we just need to make sure we check the math. We had some things that were allocated kind of strangely, and you have a few blanks, which I'm sure we'll address. I know this is just a killer spreadsheet.
Blanks are actually there because there's no public use, Larry. Are you, for example, if you look under specialty classrooms?
Oh, yeah, zeros in some
Yes.
of them. But we also had, I mean, if you're looking at classrooms, for example, on the prorated salaries, you changed the calculation of the hours available, kept the prorated salaries, but I can't tell if that's $15,000 assigned for each of the 149 classrooms, which would make the math wrong, or if it's $15,000 assigned to all 149 classrooms, which I think still would make the math wrong. So there's probably a few things that are not under the time pressure that I gave you the other day of giving you comments on this. Would be great to see one last iteration well before the next
I will
one.
send it to you electronically, and you will be able to see a formula in any cell that you choose.
That's what I was afraid of. Okay.
And if any other board member would like it electronically, I'd be happy to send it to you.
Now that we're at the board.
I will, okay.
Yeah. Those cells that have a division error?
It's just divided by 0 because there's no hours.
Right.
Okay.
If you look at the column, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Okay.
5, the sixth column from the
Is that what
left,
that is? Okay.
which is the public use, if there's 0
If
in
there's
there.
0 there, you
right.
get there, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand it for everybody that really wants to understand this. So now that we know what it costs, we're changing what we're charging to reflect what's fair for the district.
Right,
Okay,
and-
it's just a basic.
And this includes custodial fees
and
within
it
this
includes
fee.
the, if it needs a custodian, then that's included in. So before we come back to this, I'm curious, groups that use the facilities all the time, if we can get feedback from them to see if we're really killing groups out because they won't be able to afford these fees, and then we would have a decision to make. I don't know, like a gym going from $35 to $100. Are there groups that are of our students that primarily I'm concerned with our students in our district that won't now be able to afford to keep it going? So I don't know an answer to that, but is that something we can find out informally? Because I would hate for us to say, okay, this is what we're going to charge, and then have, second grade basketball or something not be able to have an activity because it just cost prohibitive. Does that make sense?
It does, but those are folks that are part of the district that are using. So this is really about when somebody would apply for a Civic Center Act or outside of a licensing agreement.
Right, so like Little Kid Basketball League, PVBA, or, we'll go back to our swim stuff that we've talked about. I want to make sure that we're not making it cost prohibitive for our students in their outside activities to participate in what they want to do, because that wouldn't be my intent.
The other thing to remember is the 14-15 direct costs. So if you see a gym, it was $35 an hour to use the gym, plus the hourly custodial rate. This now is saying it is $100 to use the gym, and it includes the custodial costs. It's $42.80 an hour.
I think if I'm hearing you right, Linda, what we want to do is kind of member check and make sure that the different groups which we partner with, some are in-house, some are out-of-house, some serve our students, some don't. For those that are serving our students, we want to do the best we can to kind of get a sense of how this will impact them.
You said that better than I did.
Okay, I heard it from you. On the flip side, we've done everything humanly possible to try to figure out what the fair amount is. So while always we want to have a dialogue and we want to make sure our partners are aware of what we're doing, and we've met with them. We probably initiated this conversation almost 2 years ago now, at least to let them know that the law was changing, this was coming. They've, I'm sure, been waiting for bated breath for us to do this. But I agree with you in terms of we need to communicate and partner well, but we also need to partner well in the fact that many of the school facilities, frankly, may not have been, we might not have been receiving enough compensation for their use, and actually we're not maintaining them well enough. So it's that balance between the two.
And the other thing, too, is this is a 2015-16 schedule, but some of the conversations that I've had with Jessica is that those groups that already have their Civic Center permits for this year will continue this year at the old fee schedule. So in the middle of their permit, we're not going to say, oh, by the way, it's this much more. But any new group that comes in to apply for a permit would be looking at the new schedule.
And remember, the schedule depends on what type of group you are. Some groups
Correct.
have no charge, some groups are
Right.
charged. I mean, the whole point of this is to get a calculated fee that actually is supportable under the law with what it's costing us to provide it, and nothing more, nothing less. In some cases where fee is going to go up, in some cases the fee is going to go down, depending on what the actual costs are. I also want to note one other thing. We had several conversations with a couple of the people in the public, in particular, and I can see one, Deb, out there, about priorities. And I suggested a way of trying to do priorities with a convoluted formula that no one got too excited about, particularly the lawyer. So what we have is kind of a hybrid that we have, I highlight number 4 on the
Which exhibit?
On the first one, the B, Exhibit B, board policy. Civic Center users with a long-standing relationship with the district and using district facilities and grounds when requesting the use of the same facilities and grounds historically used, and I don't need to read it, and the same amount of use. So the idea is that if it's someone that's been there for a long time with a Civic Center permit, they have the right, they have a priority over someone else coming in, new group coming in, but only to the place they've been and the amount of use they've been. So that hopefully addresses the issues of we have people that block out space and they don't use it. Okay, that's not, the use is what they actually used, not what they blocked out in space. They want to get it at the 3 best high schools. They want to be this high school, that, and we're particularly talking about pools. They want to get it, it's going to be what they've historically had, no more than they've historically had, and they've actually used it. And the feeling is that that should, by following those restrictions, should be enough to free up enough space so that everybody has a reasonable use. I'll be off the board by the time there's feedback on that, and it'd be interesting to see implementing that after 6 months, if that comes true or not. I kind of think it will, because as long as we enforce the actual use of it and the historical use, I think we should be okay. But I think that's something that the boards want to keep their eye on going forward with the couple of things that we have that are impacted.
And with
the gyms,
this,
the pool.
And with the management software that we now have, we're doing better at tracking actual use?
This year will be the best year because last year we didn't start at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons we did struggle pulling all of this together.
Yeah.
So the good thing that came of putting all this together is that Chris and Deirdre are now thinking, how do we input this in School Dude so at the end of next year we can get a report that will give us the information that we're looking at, because we'll be updating this every year now, where they were literally going through, manually going through the invoices, comparing it to actual usage, calendared events. And so there was a lot of legwork on Chris and Deirdre's part. They worked real hard on pulling everything together to input. And so it's really made all of us think differently about how we're going to use the system to make sure that it benefits us at the end of each year, too.
But we're keeping track of all that now for this,
Yes.
for this year?
Yes.
Okay. And then, do we factor in, is there anything that's going to cost more so that people won't use it at all, and then you just adjust that for the next year into your overall cost?
Yes, because part of this calculation is not only based on the total hours the facility is used between school and public, but then it breaks out the public use alone, and that calculation is used to make the percentage, so, yeah.
But is there a situation where, through our use of licensing agreements moving forward, can you imagine where there may be some facilities that there would never be availability for a civic center because we have licensing?
Yes, Little Leagues. Yeah, and we've actually been working with Jessica, and we're going to, as soon as we get this approved, we're jumping right on license or joint use agreements
Joint
with.
use.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to jump ahead, but I
yeah.
think it's important to, this is essential that we have, but I can imagine a
Yeah.
time where it would only probably apply to several types of facilities or
Right.
spaces. I have a kind of a 5,000-foot question, so I don't want to go there until we've been looking at this for quite a while. I am struck as I was reading through all the terms and conditions, and then we also later on are going to be discussing revitalizing some of the playgrounds, especially in the city that we live in Palos Verdes Estates. There are essentially no parks with any form of playground equipment. So the schools essentially become the de facto playgrounds for all the local families. With new leadership, and I know Malcolm meets with the mayors, but especially with your relationships with the city managers, I think this would be a great time to revisit the conversation about the ways in which the city, I'm thinking particularly of the city we live in, but others as well, can partner with the district to figure out ways that we might be able to improve kind of the playground field type. And it's not quite a policy issue, so I'm probably pushing the border here, but I think I would encourage you, and I hope the board, if we need to have another conversation further, would engage in that dialogue again, because they really do serve. They're not civic center acts, they're not none of this, but in actuality, the reality is the families of those cities are using the facilities on any weekend, all day long. So I was struck by when I was reading the terms and then knowing that the playground equipment stuff or turf is coming up, that I wanted to share that. That's my 5,000.
All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for hanging.
Thank you, son.
All right, so. Okay, so as presented the first reading, so we go back to M1.
Let the light shine. All right, guys.
Oh, you know what? No, you know what? Excuse me, Joan. What? You actually had a non-agenda item that I skipped past. Come on. No, you have to come because you guys are it's about something we can't talk back to you about. So
we're following protocol. Some of the other folks would not be happy.
Yes,
All right, it's time to put on your happy dance. Thank God the children didn't see that. That's my happy dance. It was okay. I'm here to talk about two non-agendized items, yes. The first one's the Professional Development Day that I know January 29th, 2016 sounds really far away, but it's not. It has me up at night already. So we are ecstatic because really, from my perspective, which I try to say is CSEA's perspective, we've not had a day like we're planning ever, where all 610 employees will be together on one site. I don't know, we might regret it later. I hope not. Because we've got so much we can do. First off, just the camaraderie of being together, but the fact that we're hoping, we're definitely just beginning the planning stages, keynote speaker, breakout workshops, being able to talk to your family group of other employees who work the same family that you do. I know this sounds really weird, but having breakfast and lunch together, we never have breakfast and lunch together, which is where a lot of the real of what's happening at a school site for all the different groups comes out and best practices can be shared. So we're just over the moon about being able to do this, and I so thank Dr. Austin and Dr. Bose, and then we've got a whole committee of people with Dr. Fricker and Dr. Culverhouse and everybody else on earth, because it's going to take a lot of people to pull this off. I know that we always have the Teachers Professional Development Day, which is awesome. This is more than awesome for us. Probably my biggest goal is to make sure that our employees realize what an investment we've made for this day for us, because it's growing pains, and it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea right away the first time, but I sure am hoping we really knock it out of the park, and I'm looking forward to getting it more underway. The other item that's happened is today I delivered to Dr. Bowe's 100 welcome packets. It's welcome packets for all of our new employees, because we've really not had a methodical way to contact an employee who's new to the district. So we've given him a packet of information with a welcome letter from me. Hopefully they'll read it, and then I'll be following up from board agendas on new employees that come, so that we can make them, help them realize what world-class school district they've just become an employee of and part of, and how we see our role, and help facilitate them back, into their new position and make them comfortable and welcome. Last but not least, thanks for all the email addresses. Oh my gosh, my world has changed. Don't tell me I've broken a law, because I did build a CSEA group. I don't use it for personal CSEA business. I do more of, would you please all go to your Gmail account? But we've done a couple of surveys, which one of them is about the Professional Development Day on the Gmail account. Our biggest transition right now is helping the people to realize they have a 365 Gmail account and how to open it and start to use it, because it's just not been something that's been most of our employees' world before. So it's very exciting. It's awesome to know that Dr. Austin and administration can push out information to everybody. And right now my words are, yes, you really do have a 365 account. Go open it. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry to make you wait. You're hiding behind Dr. Fricker. I apologize. All right, now we'll go to M1, Solar Energy Conceptual Plan. And the solar energy guys that have been sitting here for the last 3 hours going, oh my goodness, what did I sign up for?
Our solar energy guys have been very patient. And tonight I'd like to introduce you to Paul Mikos, President of PFMG Solar, and Alex Smith, Vice President. And they are going to give us a presentation about a conceptual idea on how solar could benefit the district.
All right, Jana, so you weren't here last time and the projector went out, so so now the projector's working and the lights won't go down? Trent, would you guys prefer to sit up at the table rather than standing? I think you'd be more comfortable sitting probably than standing, but you're more than welcome either way.
Someone needs to click.
He has a clicker.
I'm happy to do it like this. Yeah, this would be fun.
All right.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Here you go.
That way you have microphone.
So Jan, I thought you were the good luck charm. I'm not so sure now. I see a nice orange light up there. Maybe we should hire a tech guy to fix it.
If it was a lighter night, I would say that stand on a chair and you could reach it.
Oh yeah, we're fine. It was just trying to do it for the
audience.
The audience that has stuck around, dying to hear this report.
You know what? I'm going to donate.
Yeah, we can give it.
I got to give mine to Debbie.
You want to hand a few of these out and we can look
Here,
at this right
here. I'm going to look at that. Save a tree. Plus, didn't we get the?
We can see it right in front of us. So.
Yeah.
Well, we used to.
Well, we used to.
I see green. That's a good sign.
Would you like me to get started? Okay.
Yeah, we can see. Well,
Trent, what are the odds? Because this is something, if anyone's watching at home, we want them to see this. It's up to.
Okay, you want to? You need a couple minutes to try to put it together.
I think it's worth it, Larry. Yes. I think we just,
So it doesn't need to be projected.
So they can see the slides.
It's like traveling with a baby. Technology.
Oh. The sharpisms we've heard in the past, I haven't.
Yeah, I had to pull that one out of the old hat.
Okay. We'll give a couple minute recess.
Oi.
For the opportunity to be here. I'm Alex Smith, Vice President.
Extended opportunity.
Extended opportunity.
Called back.
I'm Alex Smith, Vice President of Business Development, and this is Paul Mikas, the President of PFMG Solar, and we are very much looking forward to presenting our solar presentation to you tonight. I'll go ahead and get started with the benefits to the project. Certainly financial benefits are key in that there will be general fund cost savings. You can see what those numbers looks like, $6.7 million over the 25-year term of the power purchase agreement, all at no tax dollar payments. There's no tax dollars to design, build, or maintain this system. We understand working with school districts, and it's very important that we use these solar energy systems as educational tools. So we've developed some really cool curriculum to tie these solar energy systems into the classroom so kids can learn about math and science using the systems as laboratories. Where we're putting canopies in parking lots, we'll be putting lighting fixtures underneath those canopies. We'll be putting significant lighting fixtures underneath the canopies that will brighten up the parking lots without going into the neighborhoods, because they will be underneath the canopies pointing down, and so the light won't go out into the neighborhoods, but it will be very safe inside those parking lots. So that's a good feature. In addition, shade is a big benefit of the project. Whether we're shading cars for parking lots or we're shading students where we have it out in a grass field, there's a big benefit to shade, especially with the hot weather that we've been having, for people to be able to go outside and get access to that shade. As long-term partners with many school districts, we understand the need to be good community partners and provide support to your mission to educate students. We'll talk a little bit more in detail later about what form that takes. That's a big part of the value that we bring to all of our clients. And there's no doubt that with solar energy, you've got clean, green, renewable energy with no emissions and providing significant energy generation, all with no emissions, for what's going on here in Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District. This is a little breakdown of the financial analysis that shows where the savings come and how they come. You can see the savings numbers in the first 5 years of $90,000 to $120,000. And in the 25 years of $5.43 to $6.71 million. The way the project works is that there's no cost to the school district. We design, build, and maintain the system, and we make our money by selling you power. We would sell you power at known rates. Here, we would be able to sell you the power at 16.54 cents per kilowatt hour, which would go up at 3.9% for the first 15 years and be flat for the last 10 years of the 25-year contract. You're currently using just under 5.2 million kilowatt hours here at the district and spending just under $950,000, spending about 18 cents per kilowatt hour, because it takes about a year to design, build, and turn the system on. Edison would have gone up again to be at 18.45, so that our 16.54 is competing with 18.45 for the savings numbers that you see up top. Also, you can see the proposed system. We're talking about carports and shade canopies. There's no rooftops as a part of this project. Everything that we're doing is a pre-approved DSA pre-checked number that goes over the counter. We are looking at a 2.24 megawatt system at 16 of your schools, producing just over 3.6 million kilowatt hours. And this would be a 70% solar fraction, meaning throughout the course of any year, you would getting 70% of your kilowatt hours from a solar. In addition, this project also includes additional scope outside of solar for critical needs that you have here at the district. So at Rancho Vista, Point Vincenti and Ridgecrest Intermediate Schools, we will be providing an electrical upgrade so that we can upgrade your main service and install sub-panels at all of your wings so that you could then later mount air conditioning units. This is very key because it's a scope of work that we worked with the district staff to incorporate into the solar project that would be included in all of this. So at no cost, and to get solar at less than Southern California Edison, we would also include this scope of work. I would also add to that, at Ridgecrest Intermediate School, it's certainly very critical that we do take on this electrical work and repair that and get it up to current codes. We had our team out there and pulled away all the plates and all the switchgear and pulled everything away. And there's certainly some very critical work that needs to be done there, and we will be able to take care of that as a part of this project. Here is a graph that shows the comparison of solar versus Southern California Edison. You can see the solar price in red and the Southern California Edison price going up at various rates of escalation. We've modeled the 5% in green, but you can see that even if Edison were to only going up at 3.5% out to the future, you'd still be well below with the solar. In addition, you can see that at the last 10 years, that price does not go up at all and is totally flat. Over 40 years, the compound annual growth rate for utility prices here in California has been just over 5%, and that's not linear. It's not 5% every single year, but the long-term trend has been over 5%. Recently, it's been much more than that. In fact, here at the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District, rates went up 10% in 2013 and 10% in 2014. And the chart that you see down below in the right-hand corner is a Southern California Edison document that they put out in 2011. And if you notice the second bullet point down from the top on the right, they are forecasting a roughly 5% per year rate increase through 2020. That's why we've modeled Southern California Edison escalation at 5%. Shade canopies are a very nice feature. And you can see up top kids enjoying the shade up in Palmdale at a K-8 school where they're able to use it for activities. Down below locally here in the South Bay is Paris Middle School on a Saturday when the kids are playing sports, the parents are sitting in the shade enjoying that view and not having to lug around the umbrellas for them. Here at Toledo Elementary, you can see how big these canopies really are, and the fact that kids can still play under them. Most shade structures that you may be thinking of that you see at school sites are just have tables and chairs under there and kids sit under them, and this you can actually play underneath them, which is a nice benefit to be able to set up outdoor classrooms or other things that you may want to do with an outdoor shaded space. And then in parking lots, you can see a picture here of an elementary school up in Palmdale, a middle school in Santa Clarita at the Hart High School District, as well as some schools at the Chaffee High School District. The Chaffee High School and Altaloma High School, they elected to paint their columns school colors. Locally here in the South Bay, the Redondo Union High School elected to go with a gray to make the columns go away a little bit more. And so that's some flexibility we have of some of the architecture of what these end up looking like. The power purchase agreement structure that we talked about, it is not debt to the district. It is not a certificate of participation. We're not asking you to take on any debt at all. We bring all the capital to design, build, and maintain the system, and then we sell you power. It's very similar to the agreement that you're in right now with Southern California Edison. Right now, you're in a power purchase agreement with Southern California Edison, but you don't know what you will pay for your electricity in the coming years. Where with this power purchase agreement, you'll have control over what you're paying for the next 25 years and be able to book that. We are able to provide electricity at a price lower than Southern California Edison, in part because of tax credits. There's currently a 30% investment tax credit for this project, and we're able to monetize that and pass that through to you in the form of lower electricity costs. At the end of 2016, that tax credit for projects not completed by the end of 2016, that tax credit goes to 10%, and so it would significantly affect cost savings to districts, typically about 60% of the cost savings. Because it takes about a year to design, build, and maintain the system, there are some time sensitivities towards getting access to that tax credit and receiving the best savings. Because we wind up owning the system and selling power back to you. We want to make sure we get the very best equipment, so we're only using top tier 1 technology for panels and inverters because we really want it to work. The only way we make any money is if the system's working and selling you power. So that's critical for both us and you. Prop 39, there are funds available from the state to do energy efficiency project. This very much complements those funds so that they can work together to save your general fund the most money. And at the end of the power purchase agreement of the 25-year term, there's 3 things that can happen. You can ask us to take it away at no cost. We could renew the power purchase agreement, perhaps put new panels on, or purchase a system at fair market value that is set by the IRS. Here is a list of the schools, the types of systems that we're putting in, the system sizes, as well as the production. And this is a little bit about our business. PFMG Solar, we're the #1 developer of projects for Southern California school districts. We have 16 school districts and 137 schools under contract. We have completed over 80 of those and are currently in construction on the rest. Locally here, there's the Redondo Beach School District. We've also done a lot of work in the Inland Empire with the Chaffee High School districts and many of their K-8 feeders, the Antelope Valley, as well as Santa Clarita Valleys. Saddleback Valley Unified School District is another school district client as well. But we understand that building at schools is different than building in other places. There's the DSA, with Division of State Architects, which is critical. There's lots of students running around. And in addition, we recognize that when we're coming to build solar projects within communities, we've got to be very sensitive to the communities to make sure that we reach out to them, let them provide input to the project, and make sure that we're being sensitive to the district's needs so that the project is a success. And that's what our team is set up to do because we specialize working with schools. Part of what that means is no change orders. When we walk the site with our engineers, which we have done, there's no change orders. So the cost that we are presenting to you tonight is fixed. We've never submitted a change order ever to a public school district here in Southern California, and we're very proud of that. And we've been able to do that because we really do our homework on the front side by doing the engineering to make sure that everything's squared away. And certainly the community partnership aspect is key. Paul and the other principals of the firm are very active in terms of supporting educational programs within our client districts, and has been a big passion of all the principals of the firm. And I think that in this particular community, Paul has some personal experience having lived in the neighborhood, and I would call on Paul to talk a little bit about that.
I raised my family here in Palos Verdes Estates from 73 to 95. My 2 daughters attended Valmont School, Malga Cove here, and Palos Verdes High School. And I'd like to take this opportunity to really thank the district for a wonderful education. Both went on to college, both are doing successful careers, and it was because they're educated here. The peninsula is a very special place. I think the feeling is rural. The people love living here. And it's our commitment that the program will be one that you're very proud of. We really take interest in making sure the community is involved. We saw today how important community input is and how the emotions of programs that don't work bring people out speaking. When we were here, they were closing schools. They closed Valmont, they closed here, and they closed Palos Verdes High School. So the board meetings that were a little different but had that same tone of, what are you doing? So the issue is when the community understands what you're doing, and we take a big part in that, we'll work shoulder to shoulder making sure that we're at meetings that are appropriate, that the community, which is the school district, is the community, and the community is the school district. People will understand the benefits. They'll understand why you're doing what you're doing, and we'll lead them through and make sure they're comfortable. We have references of every single client we've ever worked with because of our attention to details. We work on school campuses when students are there. We've never had an accident. We've never had issues with communities. We make sure that they understand it and appreciate it, and we'll work with you to make sure that the benefits are widely known. That's something we really feel strongly about. And the commitments, too, is we get very involved with helping educate the students the way you want it. In every single case, we've looked at scholarships, we've looked at tutoring, we've looked at internships. I feel particularly close to this community. I spent some time, I got here a little early and drove around the peninsulas a few years ago that we lived here, and so many changes, but it's still a beautiful place, and we intend that our solar systems will fit into the environment and make sure everybody appreciates exactly what you're doing.
Thank you, Paul. And in addition, regarding some of the construction components as well, Division of State Architect is key. Every project we've ever done has been closed out with certification by the DSA, so we're very familiar with that process, and we'll be able to take these projects from start all the way through to the close. And in addition, we have enhanced electrical safety specifications so that everyone that's working with electricity and building on these projects will be safe to be able to deliver these things. Some of the labs that we've put together up top is a lab from Palmdale High School with a teacher, Ruben, that really got excited about the curriculum that we put together. You can see the lab where they're learning about what is electricity. Down below, the students are in the parking lot looking up, counting panels, and figuring out how those programs work. That program expanded from a curriculum in a classroom to Skills USA, where these two students had been high-performing academic students, and they enrolled in this, came first in LA, first in the state. We flew them to Kansas City to compete in the Nationals. They came in fourth. From there, because they came in fourth in the Nationals, they were entered into a Solar Car Cup challenge in Texas Motor Speedway, where that car that you see down below is powered only by solar panels and batteries. Some of the folks they were competing with had carbon fiber chassis. This is an old VW chassis from the 60s there. But it's something that was very exciting to see it go from a curriculum all the way through to building a car like this. And that's our commitment, that if there's a teacher or someone within the district that gets excited and takes a hold of this and wants to keep going with it, we'll keep going as well. With community input, it's very key to not only plan and design and get input prior to construction, but also to continue to provide that community outreach so that everybody knows what you're doing and appreciates what you're doing. We certainly always have celebrations, whether it's for a groundbreaking or when the systems turn on and we flip that switch that you can see up there in the middle. And they're always fun events where everyone gets to learn a little bit more about it, and the district can get some proper accolades for the leadership position they're taking within the community regarding renewable energy and general fund savings. I've also provided, attached to the back of this, all the site plans as to where we would plan to locate these panels, and if you'd like, I'd be happy to take you through these, or if you have questions now, we could go to questions.
Can you just walk through them, because we gave our copies to the audience?
Sure.
No.
And I can send you another set.
Okay, just, you don't have to go in detail. Just
Sure. So starting out here at Cornerstone at Pedregal, down below there, you have an existing shade canopy on the east side of where our solar array is going. So we would plan on removing that and extending that shade canopy out over that area that we have there as a shade structure. The red X represents the meter, the Edison meter, and the yellow line is our underground electrical connection. Dapple gray, we've got a system on the upper field there that's a shade canopy right on the edge of the blacktop in the field. Mira Catalina in the lower field on the northern end next to the playground areas and some basketball courts. Mira Lest, we have all in the parking lot. Monte Malaga, we have it in the field area, which is bordering the ball walls and the blacktop. I'd also add that when we did walk these sites, we met with the principals and walked with them to get their input on where they thought a shade canopy would make sense. So all the site plans you see do reflect that. Palos Verdes High School, one of the things that we recognize here is that putting a large parking lot style project here is probably not the best idea in terms of having community support and making sure that this will go well. So we have decided to locate them in other places. And what we did is when we walked with the principal, we found that A is a location where on the south end of the courtyard there was some open space where some shade could really go well, perhaps concrete underneath and put some more tables there, so there's more shaded area out in that region. And then B is where you have those ball wall courts that are fairly unused, to be able to cover those so that we'd be able to get some solar get enough for cost savings, but also put them in a location that's more central to the campus and less exposed to people's view sheds. Palos Verdes Intermediate School, we have a parking canopy in the lower lot as well as a small parking canopy A. One of the reasons why we have that set up there is that anytime you cover a parking spot, you also have to cover ADA parking spots. So for example, if you're covering 50% of the regular parking spots, you've also got to cover 50% of the ADA stalls or handicap parking stalls. Here at Peninsula, we are looking at putting panels in the parking lot. Point Vincenti Elementary is a shade canopy.
Shade canopy, it's a wall, and it's not stable.
The maintenance facility, as well as Rancho Del Mar High School, we have a small shade canopy for each of those facilities. Rancho Vista Elementary is a shade canopy. Ridgecrest Intermediate is also a shade canopy. Silver Spur Elementary is a shade canopy on the border of the blacktop and the grass field area. Soleado as well is a shade canopy along the eastern edge of the blacktop. Valmani is on the east side of the blacktop and to the west of the play area where it was tucked in. And Vista Grande, we have two shade canopies, one on the west facing and one south facing. Any questions that you may have for us?
Ask away.
Ask away. I have to believe you're familiar with something that's in front of the California Public Utilities Commission. Was brought to my attention an article that was in the paper, well, October 27th, that PG&E and Southern California Edison are going to the PUC, submitting proposals, would drive up solar costs for new customers. And essentially it sounds like they're saying, well, it's great if you're trying to go off the grid, but we've got all this overhead. And I just wondered if that's come on your radar yet. This, like I said, it looks like a pretty new article. How much is the landscape changing? I mean, it's the same sort of thing that you hear that our water rates are going up because we're not using as much water. And somebody's got to pay for the infrastructure, the pumping stations, blah, blah, blah. So that's one question. I've got another one coming up. So
Okay, I'll start with the first question.
The legislative landscape is kind of a concern to me.
So the Public Utilities Commission is in charge of regulating rates for all of the customers and investment-owned utilities. So Edison, PG&E, and San Diego Gas and Electric. And at various times, those three different companies have gone before the Public Utilities Commission to try to make solar less financially viable. They've done that for a variety of reasons. And at this time, the Public Utilities Commission is appointed by the governor, and the governor has control over who is on that commission. And given the political landscape of who's been the governor recently, whether it's been our most recent governor or the one before him, they've all been very pro-solar. And so the things that the utility companies have tried to bring forward towards a Public Utilities Commission have failed in terms of making solar less viable. However, recently, there is a move towards changing the way net metering applies to customers. That would only apply to customers who sign up after 2017. So for your project, you would be grandfathered into the existing landscape as it is today and not be affected by the changes that are the recent changes that they're trying to make. The changes that they're trying to make today would affect projects a few years out. Projects that sign now get get the rules as they are now. I'd also say that the Public Utilities Commission has approved significant rate hikes for customers like school districts. However, they've changed the way that residential tariffs have taken place. And so many of these fixed charges, where you get a fixed charge on your meter, just it's a per meter charge, that's really a residential tariff scenario, and it doesn't affect the tariffs that you're in here as a larger commercial or industrial customer. So the way that the utilities are trying to slow down solar has been a variety of different ways, but the things that they've done to have significant negative impacts have failed. They've been voted down and ruled that they can't do them. And the things that they're getting through now for a few years out really only affect residential customers or customers that would take place after you. So the landscape for solar is very secure for your project in terms of the value that you would receive.
Can I ask a second question? I guess it's a question. I'm a big Elon Musk fan, and so I think his Powerwall is kind of cool. Right. Do you foresee a time where we actually can store the power that we generate? And you know, the problem with solar is the sun goes down or it's too cloudy or something like that. Do you foresee that your company would, you know, as the technology moves along, and Elon and the guys and who else is working on battery storage, perfect their technology, that might come to be part of our project?
We would welcome the opportunity to bring battery storage back when we can see the financial benefits to the districts. We have elected not to utilize battery storage at this time due to the cost benefit that comes along with it. However, that said, as costs come down in the future, we very much believe that battery storage will be something that we bring back to all of our clients to add value to the existing solar projects.
We always size the solar systems to where the technology that it advances can be part of it. Batteries right now are just too expensive. The size of the battery that would be needed would be half the size of this room right now in order to be of effect, and the cost would be prohibitive. But I'm sure that the greatest technology in our business will come through batteries, and we certainly intend to use it when it's possible.
I have a list of questions that I don't think have any particular order. I've been trying to figure out how to have some logical sense, but I'll jump off what you just said, and then I'll go towards some others. So in the presentation you said we'd probably use about 70% of our historical usage. Does that include this idea of potentially setting up some of the schools for HVACs? You mentioned Ridgecrest, I think, I can't remember.
So we have sized the systems very conservatively. The reason why you wouldn't want to go too much more than 70% is because of what we just talked about a little bit, which is net metering. And basically what net metering is during the summer, when schools are closed and the solar is out and producing a lot of electricity through our systems
that we're not storing,
that you're not storing,
selling back to us,
and you're not using because you don't need to use that much, that will go back out through your meter into the grid and power the community. So all the local residential homes will still pay their bill as they normally do, but the electricity will come from the solar system. You'll get a credit on your Edison bill based on what you would have paid. And so you build up these credits in the summer, but you've got to be able to use all those credits in the fall, winter, and spring. So we don't want to size the system so that you build up a bank of credits that you can't then pull from.
Okay, so this wasn't in the presentation. This is helpful, right? So this is exactly what I was going to ask, is what if we ever did generate more than we could use? What are you doing with it?
So it's really what you're doing with it.
Well,
just makes our
because what would happen is you would buy the power from us. Sure. So you'd buy whatever is created. And then you would then sell it to Southern California Edison based on what they would have charged you.
So we will, not you.
Yeah,
correct.
Which will be the highest rate that they will charge during the hot summer months. Daylight time is their highest rates, and therefore you're selling it back to them at much, much more than you are paying from
so
us.
that's helpful information. I would add that on the next slide presentation because it's helpful. Do we partner with anyone who has physical property on our land that we don't own? Because if
Must
not,
have a cell tower or something somewhere.
this would be the first that I can think of.
I would think cell towers.
Okay. So, you can imagine where I'm going. We have shade structures and parking structures. Are there anything else besides those that you ever do, or no? That's pretty
That's
much
it.
okay.
Well,
So,
occasionally we put them on the ground, but those are out in rural areas
Sure.
where they have the space. But
Sure.
no, and we don't go on roofs either.
we're going to be hanging them off the cliff. And
No, you don't want to do that either.
So you have shade structures, you have parking structures, and clearly we're a school district and you're working with other school districts. So you own the property, you maintain it, but yet it's on our property and it's over our kids. So I'm just, if you could speak a little bit about that. What
Sure. So anything that gets built on a public school in California is going to go through the Division of State
Sure.
Architects. And part of what they take on in stamping and approving projects is the structural liability of those structures. And so once the DSA approves it and certifies it, they take on the liability of that thing falling down.
Sure.
So that's that. We would get an easement on your property to build the system and maintain the system. And all of our maintenance activities would be coordinated through the district, but no direct responsibilities from the district.
Sure. And as you know, I mean, some of the public will know this, others won't. I mean, we try to do everything we can to partner with our communities, but technically by the law of the land, we own that property and we can build and do anything we want on that property. We don't try to operate like that, but that's the reality. I'm assuming you know we have a very sensitive community that feels strongly about what happens on the schools, both with our curriculum and our facilities. Can you talk at all about how you have gone about partnering with the district to educate the community and work with the community to
Absolutely.
get to the implementation phase?
I think that, we are categorically CEQA exempt from on this project, so we technically don't have to by letter of the law. However, we want to be good partners and good neighbors and have happy people surrounding our projects. So to that end, what we typically do is host community meetings where needed, where we provide renderings and boards where we can show people what it would look like, where it's planning to go, and what the scope of the project is. In fact, this past few weeks, I've been in Santa Clarita at the Sulphur Springs School District, along with their superintendent and administration at these meetings, hosting these meetings at the schools, and having the community come in to learn about the project, get the very best information. In addition, we have meetings with the principals where we provide education to the principals on all the implications of the project, provide them with frequently asked questions documents that would also be posted to the website, so that if anyone wanted to look about the project, they can find it both at the website, but also hard copies, and providing the principal that education. Sometimes when someone comes off the street, they can help provide that answer as well.
Great.
But certainly, if there would be some input that we received from a community meeting that would impact the project, we'd work with this district staff to make sure that it's going to work for everybody.
Great.
Yeah, I just make comment that about 3 weeks ago, we spent an evening at 4 schools at the Saddleback High Schools, all 4 of them, on back-to-school night. And we had a booth there with all of our material showing exactly where it was, answering questions and so forth. And I think once people understand what's happening as opposed to just it happens, then there's really good buy-in. In all the projects we've ever done, we only got pushback on one array at a school district. And it really was a false issue because they removed a bunch of trees, and they assumed it was because of the solar system. The trees were removed before the solar system was considered. It was undermining the sidewalk and the street. So there was pushback, and the school district said, let's do it anyway. And we said, listen, I don't think 100 kW is worth that issue. So we're very sensitive to that. I lived here. In the estates, you couldn't paint a house without getting permission on what color it was going to be. So believe me, I appreciate the sensitivity of the neighborhoods here.
And our trees, we have long...
And trees as well. I had maybe 10 eucalyptus on my house, so I know exactly what trees are.
My last question is, you've mentioned this kind of key date of 2017, and you mentioned this 30% tax rate and kicks down to 10% if for some reason it takes that long. Does the locking in at 30%, which it sounds like you've redistributed into savings the cost on the amount of the electricity is how it works out, what if we decide we want to move forward, we come to some form of agreement, and it's not necessarily you or us that delays it. It might be DSA, it could be a particular school site has particular issues around placement and what have you, and it delays. At what point are we grandfathered in? When the DSA has actually approved it, or when we've come to some sort of contract?
So what I would say in regards to that is that there's always particular issues for particular school sites. So working through those to discover what we need to do for scheduling so that we can uncover things as early as possible is helpful to avoid mitigating that. But what we've spoken to Lydia and Don about is that given the tax credit deadline at the end of 2016, should you agree to move forward on this project at your following meeting that you have coming up, that PFMG Solar would be able to deliver the project at the price that we've provided to you so that there's no change orders.
Yeah. There may be, when we look at title, we look at easements, there may be issues where one array cannot go there, and you may decide it shouldn't go anywhere, and we just wouldn't build that. So we'll phase this in a program that makes sense to you. When we built the Chaffee School District, they were putting in a number of stadiums. So we had to coordinate the work after or during or while their construction was going on. So really, we sit down and there's a lot of communications on which schools go when, how fast, when. When there's testing, we don't build when there's testing, standardized testing. So we need to understand your program and work within your limits.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other thing I remembered, do you remember when Redondo passed their bond specifically for solar?
2012.
2012. Don't they like own it?
Yes, Redondo Beach utilized a different technique to do the project. And basically, because Redondo Beach has no air conditioning district-wide, their rates were very, very, very low and for their price per kilowatt hour. And so their superintendent, Stephen Keller, asked me to put together a power purchase agreement originally. And we were unable to generate cost savings because without the expensive air conditioning consumption within the district, the price they paid was very low, and we couldn't get below their rate. And so once that was no longer an option, he said, well, let's look at another option. And that's when the concept of putting Measure Q out came about.
Alex, just a couple quick things, because I want to make sure that we get a couple things in here. The price that is quoted in your presentation includes all of the electrical panel work for Ridgecrest, Point Vicente, and for Rancho Vista. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And just a reminder, the feasibility study told us that the Rancho Vista project alone was going to be the better part of $750,000. So we're generating this cost with this potential project while also doing projects that we cannot otherwise afford. And Alex, you hit on the Ridgecrest panel, but I'd like you to just go a little deeper with the board, the issues that your guys found when they got in there, and the scope of that work. I just want to make sure everyone knows how important that work is. I know it's a secondary benefit of this project, but if you can just comment to that.
Absolutely. So I'll talk about the first two elementary schools and close with Ridgecrest. So we'll be providing new electrical equipment that can handle the new load of air conditioning units at the two elementary schools. We'll be providing all of the conductors and conduits to go out to the wings, installing sub-panels so that units can be dropped in and put into place. So that's all included in this charge for those two schools. And then at Ridgecrest, we're doing the same thing, but at Ridgecrest, it's a little bit different because you need to make those changes to that electrical system anyway. That system is dangerous as it is. I would say that what is there, what is noted on the panel board is not what is actually beneath the surface of the electrical infrastructure there. And so that's certainly something that when our team opened everything up and looked at all the conductors that feed into the bus plates behind the electrical switchgear, they had very great concerns about that. And it's something that they found to be very significant, something they had not seen ever at another school.
Is there
We are special.
Is there an actual equation that you can come up with where those are 3 sites that just happen to be highlighted, but there's no reason why there aren't other sites that we might want to do the same kind of work? Is it actually like, listen, if you were to do a panel at another elementary school, it costs about this much and it's going to go up this fraction of a percentage on your, there must be some sort of equation there where at some point it would make sense, but.
Well, we looked at all the electrical panels district-wide, and we looked at everything. And Ridgecrest is different. When you had a modernization that went through some time ago, everything else was really brought up to modern code and modern specs and the way things are with modern electrical gear. Ridgecrest was not.
Yeah, I am getting more at the HVAC issue, meaning I'm just wondering if at other sites, what would be kind of the cost-benefit analysis or the ROI on if panels not necessarily need to be replaced like Ridgecrest, but need to be modified to be able to accommodate the energy.
I may be mistaken, but in the engineer's report, I believe they only focused on those schools because those are the only schools that needed the upgrades required to get the HVAC. But Lydia, perhaps I'm mistaken
That might
there.
be accurate, but it might not necessarily answer my question either. So is it that those are the only 3 schools we looked at, or that the others don't need it, or just happen to be those are the 3 we focused on and that's why you got that?
Those are the 3 schools where we don't have air conditioning and we had the biggest concerns from the community.
Sure. So
And
are there
so-
others where, do all the others have air conditioning, or are there other sites that might be able to benefit from an increased capacity? I'm just raising the issue.
PVIS, for example, I don't believe has air conditioning. PV High School might have some rooms.
So for next steps, what I'd be interested in knowing is what would be the costs while we're doing it to actually potentially, help me out with the verb, create, situate the electric panel to be able to process that. Not saying we're going there, but I'd like to know what it is.
We'd be happy to provide that information.
Well, I don't know if I'm one board member. I don't know if others are interested or.
You're saying you get all the schools that don't have air conditioning ready.
Potentially, or
See what the cost is.
are there others besides those 3 that were the most kind of high profile, most in need? If we're actually trying to finally do something proactive, why not at least see what would be needed to situate or create
could
a
I-
situation for the other schools?
Trent? Do you know of other schools where electrical panels have presented your guys with a problem other than the 3 that we mentioned?
Not off the top of my head which ones, but I think it is a concern. When you're adding more classroom technology into the classroom, we're adding, most of our stuff is adding outlets and things like that, but we do have to have those conversations, especially like when you look at the SMRT building we just put in. There was an electrical upgrade for that to handle the number of computers and technology, so there are some spots where we do have to address that.
Didn't we hear something at last week's tech meeting about someone like plugging in a cart that had Chromebooks and blowing a circuit?
Yeah, we have some
something to that effect.
We do
I'm-
have some of
I'm
those
getting
issues.
nods from the audience that we had
so
something
those
like-
those are definitely considerations, as especially some schools have asked about adding a lab, adding a technology-focused classroom. So it is a consideration, absolutely.
Well, a challenge we have is that is the redondo factor, is that people may have in their mind that that we're going to go down that path and we're buying a bunch of we're doing what they did. Maybe it was long enough ago.
Well, I think part of our whole community outreach program will be to
Yeah.
say there's no tax dollars being spent on this project. There's general fund savings. There's
Yeah.
shade for the kids. There's
Right.
shade for the community. And there's absolutely no tax dollars being utilized at the very beginning.
Yeah. Note to Stephen, how's it getting away with no air conditioning the next time you see him?
I was going to ask Alex if he could just repeat that statement about 50 more times, districts without air conditioning. One thing I would like to add, though, is earlier today I met with all of the city managers, let them know about tonight's presentation, and they were all excited about the concept. And the new city manager, relatively new for RPV, had done this exact agreement and as the city manager for Salt Lake City, a massive project, and had nothing but great things to say about it, and the savings and the reviews even years later. So all 4 cities are aware, and we've talked to them already about community outreach and what that may look like in the future.
Should I go? Okay. I have a few questions, but they're all really, I promise, really short questions and answers. The Homes Association, my dear friends in Palos Verdes Estates, they don't like, my experience as a homeowner has been not great in terms of this kind of thing. And we do have some schools in PV Estates, and you mentioned that, I think you said you live there. I have solar panels on my roof that had to face a certain way for only a certain use, blah, blah, blah. I guess the answer would be simply that if it doesn't work out, we just don't do those schools if they veto?
Yeah, I think one of
They can't veto.
Yeah.
They can't veto us?
We can only decide.
Oh,
Yeah.
maybe I should have bought a school
They
then.
can't really, they cannot really stop you
Not
from
cheap.
doing any of this, even as a
It's to
homeowner.
maintain.
However, there's prudence to make sure that you do it right and you put it in the right place. Homes have usually one place to put it, and that's on the roof. And your best way to do this is face south or southwest. And so if that's in the backyard, that's less of a problem. If it happens to be in the front yard, then you probably get a little bit more pushback. We've taken great care in putting these in places in your school with less visibility to the outside and more help and shade for your folks. Obviously, Palos Verdes High School could have used a lot more. In fact, we probably could have filled that parking lot.
Yeah.
Every single high school we've done previous to this, we've put them out in the parking lots and filled the parking lots. There's always the thought process, I don't like these, they're ugly. That's 6 years ago when we got into this business. That was kind of the way it was, and we had to really kind of sell the thought process of what they look like. When we did it at the Chaffee School District, which, like you in ways, had a lot of older schools, the board president, when we had the kickoff, said, we've modernized all our campuses. The community likes the fact that now we look like newer schools, but they were very visible there. They're not very visible where we've decided to put them, and we took great care to walk with staff, but also with the principals at each place, and they'd be the first ones to scream about how it looks and where it goes. So I think that went very, very well. But again, I think the community outreach is to get ahead of it. Once the agreement is signed, you go and you show them what you're doing, you explain what you're trying to accomplish, the benefit to the school district and so forth, and we've had tremendous feedback positively. In fact, where we've built its schools, the cities around the schools, in Palmdale and Lancaster, they followed, and we have systems there. The same thing is happening out in the San Gabriel Valley where we have some systems. The cities see it because the schools are such a big part of a community, and if the schools think it's a good idea, why not do it here? But schools pay the highest cost of electricity. I mean, if you think your homeowner residential power is heavy, the schools pay a premium because the way they use electricity. Heavy uses during the times where things cost the most. So it's very cost effective for school districts to do that. And when we can then put in additional work like we've done here and still be cost effective, then it even is better. Redondo Beach happened to have a bond and pass a bond. Every other school district we've done, with the exception of one school, has been done through a power purchase agreement because school districts don't have the bond capacity, or they have so much usage. The Chaffee School District passed bonds for $1.2 billion, or excuse me, 800 million, but had needs for $1.2 billion. So they said, let's do it this way and save the powder to fix the schools and do other things. So a power purchase agreement is a wonderful way for school districts to do this project with no cash out front. And I think you're correct, and it's got to be a good program. It's got to look good, feel good, and benefit everybody, not just the school, but the community. And we work hard to help you get that across.
And my other question is, and I always look at cost. If you've had any, we've had some schools with some issues with vandalism lately. I'm curious if you've had any experience with that. And just that we have any any cost, I don't know, kids can figure out something.
Skateboarding on top of that.
Yeah, skateboarding or whatever. And then if there's any cost for us at all, legal fees or anything like that, so that we're saying it doesn't cost us anything, and I just want to think, not being an expert in this field, if there are some costs, I'm okay with that, I just want to be able to understand.
Regarding the costs, in particular, the typical costs that you'd have in a construction project, you'd have your DSA inspectors and your lab of record fees. We pay those, so we reimburse the district for those fees. And then for legal fees, we reimburse districts up to $12,500 for legal negotiation fees that you may have as part of the contracts. And there's absolutely no costs for the construction, for all the permitting, for closing things out. The only cost to you is to buy the power.
I might comment on the vandalism part of it. These structures are very high, and unless there's a really good plan by a student or a comer, they have great difficulties to get up. The height are...
We're looking at about 10 feet on the low side, 15 feet on the high side, 12 feet in the middle. There's certainly, we have seen some instances of vandalism, but in 80 schools that we've only had 2 really of major instances. And what happened at those locations out in the Antelope Valley is that there had been some panels that were broken, and we went out and fixed them. And so I think that's key. We're totally responsible for maintaining the system and making sure they operate.
Yeah. We insure it, so if there is vandalism, that's on our nickel.
How long have you guys been around?
6+ years.
And the risks to this project are a couple. One, the calculations about the rates are wrong. Okay, relatively a low risk, but a risk. I think the bigger risk is if you're here in 25 years.
Yes.
Right.
To be in fairness.
Well,
and I'm not, I mean, are you a publicly traded company?
No.
Okay, so you're privately held.
Yes.
About approximately what size are you in terms of sales dollars?
Well, it's hard to measure sales dollars because, first of all, we have a finance partner. At this time, it is Constellation, which is interesting for you. It's an East Coast utility. In other words, we build and they eventually own and operate the system under our guidance. They are owned by Exelon Corporation, which is a $10 billion corporation. Our previous, we sold to NRG Energy, which is one of the largest energy companies before that. So although we remain the partners, we remain the people involved, the ultimate ownership is by major corporations. I would also say that even if it would remain with us, the value of what we've created is a power purchase agreement that you owe money to somebody that would love to own that contract. That would be if we weren't backed by a major corporation.
So if there were to be a bankruptcy of any firm who were to own the project, upon liquidation, somebody would want to take on that asset because it's a revenue-generating asset, and they have to abide by the terms of the power purchase agreement in terms of production and maintenance. So really, what would happen is you would write your check to somebody else.
So you guys don't actually have people that on your staff that do the maintenance and so on?
No, nobody really does in our industry. There is an industry of itself that is maintenance. What you will have, however, is all this is online. You can check any time to see the production of the system online. In fact, part of the curriculum is we modify that for use in a classroom. So on a sunny day, they can see the production as opposed to a cloudy day, a rainy day, and so forth. During the summer, it's higher than it is during the fall. So if you needed to, you could see the production at any given time. We also monitor that as well, and we have someone that what we call an asset manager who does nothing but monitor and look at the performance of the system, and if need be, gets that solved right away. So we do have that in-house to make sure that our suppliers are taking good care of our systems. The problem is that if it doesn't work, we can't bill you for something. So it behooves us to make sure this stuff works.
I understand. A couple other smaller questions. You've been very generous about saying that if something doesn't work somewhere, you won't put it in. So it's not an all or nothing concept.
No.
On the other hand, if you don't do some percentage of it, large
Yes.
enough percentage, there's not economies of scale enough to make the rates work the way you propose to do it.
Yeah.
What kind of?
Well, I would say on this project, the way we've designed the rates is that they do stand on their own.
So
That said,
if three of the schools said
Correct.
it's never going to work,
Right.
financially, the numbers still work for you.
Right, exactly. And what you'd find there is if there were 3 schools, because each school has its own price per kilowatt hour. It's different, so the high schools
So you gave
are
us a
lower.
blended rate, basically.
Yes,
We gave you an
exactly right.
average, so if we
Okay,
pulled
because
out
I was gonna, that
schools-
was my question to ask.
Yeah.
It makes no sense that PV High, with just a couple small panels in a long run, is going to be the same price necessarily as
No.
Peninsula High with a bazillion panels
It's
in a
not.
shorter run.
I think the only issue that we should discuss is the biggest system is at Peninsula High School. I think if that was not done, then it probably would be a bit of an issue because all the other ones are so small. You have a singular cost no matter if you're putting in one panel or several thousand panels. You've got all the costs that go into one. So when you have a bigger site like Peninsula High School, it allows you to spread the costs a little bit more to get the cost down on the smaller ones. So I would say, with the exception of Rolling Hills High School, there's
Now
none.
you're dating yourself.
Excuse me, Peninsula.
That was what it was when I
Well,
went there.
I used to know it as Rolling Hills High School, so, I'm not too far away from that. Yeah, so that would be the biggest issue if that wouldn't
So let
be
me ask you
viable.
a specific question about that, because I was going to lead to my last question. You have a design in the parking lot, and your engineers have walked the parking lot. The parking lot is incredibly narrow lanes, narrow parking spaces. I have 3 cars that my kids drove to that high school that have the dents and things to prove how small that.
Right.
So I assume that when they walked it and they looked at it and they were able to design panels that would work within, or are they going to is it going to require us to have to significantly change the parking the way it's set up now?
So when we walked the lot, we measured the width, and we know how wide it is, and so all the canopies will stay within the parking stalls as they are. So the parking canopy won't extend beyond what an existing parking stall is today. The columns themselves are rectangular columns, about 14 by 6, that go right at the T of the parking stalls in the middle, and they go every other parking stall. And so you have a small area that's taken up by the column itself.
But you're minimizing the impact, basically.
Yeah,
By going down the middle, and then in terms of turns, if there are particular turns, we can install bollards so that folks don't clip the
You're
edge of
not
those
going to be
panels.
able to install enough bollards in that place, I can assure
And
you.
and we have had things be
Yeah.
clipped, but that is our responsibility to fix them. And I know, for example, at Adams Middle School in Redondo Beach, last year, a delivery truck clipped our array, and we fixed it that day.
You don't lose any parking spots either.
So the only school you wouldn't be terribly upset about is if PV High didn't want to do it. You probably wouldn't be a little bit of a relief.
Well, we'd
I mean,
like,
it's
yeah.
funny because you have it set up over a sand volleyball court that they spent $40,000 or $50,000 of community funds about 5 or 6 years ago to do, that now is not going to use much, and you won't have the structure high enough that they can use it anymore. So I can imagine you might have an issue or two there, but
Actually, Larry, it's not over the sand court. It's over the hand
The-
courts that no one uses.
oh, you're talking about where the
Yes,
cement.
they're kind of like tucked down low.
Okay, all right. I just knew the people that did the sand volleyball court, so. All right, I think that answers my questions.
I just want to add one, just to make sure we're all on the same page. If we are to proceed, there is a sense of urgency and a tight timeline. So can you give us some kind of drop-dead kind of timelines on this? And again, if we go forward, we sign the agreement, then we start the community outreach, and here we go. But this is not something we can talk about for 6 months. So Alex, can you just address
Yes,
that?
absolutely. Given the time sensitivity of the tax incentive, we would recommend that if you wanted to be able to take access to the cost savings as we presented them, that you take this and take it up for a vote for your approval at your next scheduled meeting. And you have, the way you would do that is through Government Code Section 4217, where you would post a notice 2 weeks prior to the meeting. There would be a public hearing, and then there would be a vote for you to take that up. And I believe your next meeting is November 18th. So
I was going to ask Lydia that question, actually, when you guys are done. So, I mean, it's not a piggyback deal or anything else. It's a much different kind of contract. Can you walk us through a little bit about how this?
I'm actually not real familiar with it. I actually asked Alex about it myself, and I can find out about it next week and put it in my update.
Because I mean, you guys have put a lot of work into it, but for all I know, there may be 17 other of you guys, that one guy's going to be 16.4, another guy's 15.3. I mean, I have a fiduciary duty to the community to make sure that if we're going to go down this road, we get the best possible deal. So I just want to understand how the contract would work and so on.
Right. I was going to give a call to LACO to talk to them about the public contract, and Alex was sharing some information with me.
And I would want to add, I want to know if there are other sites that could use either an increased capacity on their electrical panel and or setup for potential HVAC, and if and how it might affect our bottom line.
And just to add a bit, I know your question was more to Lydia, but if I may, to add
Please.
on a little bit. So the way that it typically works with districts is we provide the informational presentation as we did tonight. And we would then present a contract to your assistant superintendent of business to distribute to your legal counsel that would represent you, that would take a look at this. They would work together with you to provide and draft up the resolutions, which for Government Code Section 4217 allow you to take advantage of time-sensitive incentives for renewable energy projects in California to move forward. What I would say is that in regards to the time-sensitive incentives, even if there were to be opportunities out there, which I don't believe that there are, because of the reason that we're the #1 developer of solar projects is because we do a good job. We also provide good value.
Now you
that
sound like me
folks that
selling a
look for.
pizza, but that's okay.
I think it's key.
He is a
because
sales
He really
guy.
sells pizzas. He's not
He really
I
sells.
I really do sell pizzas.
He's not demeaning you at all.
It was a compliment, actually.
Well, good, thanks.
And he can't really sell it right now, so just keep
Okay.
Just be careful if he gives you an apron.
Okay. Well, I think it's key to grasp what happens if the project's not complete by end of 2016, is that even if there were to be a % or 2 delta in between, it's not going to make up for the 60% delta in the tax incentives. It's something to consider as you're thinking about this. And I'll welcome the opportunity to present all the documents to Lydia in terms of the contract itself for review and for your consideration.
It does seem a little bit, especially considering the meeting that you saw earlier tonight, right, that if we're doing our best job possible to communicate with our community and outreach, that I love the fact that you've walked the sites, you've met with the principals, and they've actually told you, hey, this is where shade would be really helpful. That's something where we shouldn't be micromanaging, right? We should be hearing from you, hey, this is what your principal said they needed, and then we look at it and say, hey, that makes sense, we like it. But to get the contract, sign it, and then go out, we're in a catch-22, right? On one hand, we can't wait. We really have a timeliness issue here. On the other hand, we can't do a year-long public relations campaign either on this. So it just seems funny, and I just want to make a note of it, that we would have the meeting, hey, just because legally we can do it quickly, that I'm just raising that as an issue that I think we need to think through over the next couple weeks on what other sort of input might we want to gather, even though we don't have to, right? We don't have to gather it from the homeowners. We legally can do whatever we want, but
Sure.
we want to be good partners. So I'm just,
Yeah, let me just suggest that every single project we have done has been with the same government code, and that goes back 6 years. So we stand on the last project we did. If it didn't work out in every possible way, then the next project doesn't get built. So we're very susceptible to one school district knowing another school district. The fact that we got to your door a little later than we did to other schools, our fault. In fact, I pushed because I thought this was a great place. I lived here. But it takes a long time in some cases, and other times decisions are made quickly. We provided letters of recommendation from every single school district that includes superintendents, CBOs, and board members. And we welcome you to talk or in any way with those. The other problem you have is if you give input before you tell people what you're doing, you're going to get more input than you know what to do with. We can make adjustments. We can even not do a school if it gets to be that way, because there's some really small ones here. But I think you really run a risk of too much information up front or too much leeway in them choosing what you should be choosing to do causes a problem. But it's your district, and I think you have to go what's comfortable with you.
Thank you guys did a great job. Anything else?
Was this site included?
No.
Because of the obvious?
Well, listen, I told the story to somebody here. I picked up my daughter one time here to go to the dentist about 11 in the morning, and I'm waiting for her to come out, and I'm looking around this. I go, my God, what a beautiful place. And she came out. I'm 12, 13 years old, and I said, Megan, do you understand and appreciate what this place is? And she looked at me like, this is all she's ever known. This is a marvelous place. I mean, it just it's gorgeous. And I think the homes around here probably would cause you more issues than it's worth to fight. That's why, I don't think we had to be told not to put something here because it didn't make any sense. So, we don't want to fight. So we're not going to put stuff in stupid places that we know are not going to work. We've done this, in 100 and some schools already, and we got a good feel for when it works and when it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, you tell us. But I don't think it's a wise situation to go out to the community and ask them where they'd like it. But we've also seen, though, and it may not happen in this community because of the types of homes, but there's been a 25 to 30% increases on residential solar once one of our school districts do it. They figure, you are the leaders here. Cities follow you. You don't follow cities. And homeowners follow you, figuring you have really thought this through. So we've seen a tremendous increase in solar on residential. We don't do residential. We do only schools and cities, water districts, and so forth. So we're used to working with public boards that have fiduciary responsibility. We understand that. And I think you have to make the decision what's good for your district. But you're dealing with a company that really appreciates where you are and the sensitivities that you have. And we'll work with you to make sure that they're met.
Good.
Okay?
Good. So,
thank you.
What do you want?
How many do you want?
Him what he wanted.
How many pizzas, huh?
Nothing right
Okay, I'll make a motion that the board authorize staff to bring an agreement with PFMG to the board for discussion action at our meeting of November 18th, 2015.
Second?
I would just say pending the information I've asked.
It's an information item only on the agenda. I don't think we can make a motion. Presented as on mine, special report presented as information item, no action.
Recommended motion.
Which one do we want to go with? Because we're comfortable with either way. So why don't we not go with the motion if it's a mistake at all and just, or the opposite, err on the side of a motion, either way.
Well, I'm looking at the
Public.
the meeting agenda doesn't have all the attachments to it, so.
Where it says no action required?
What's on the public agenda?
It's on the one online. Right, I just read it off. M1.
It's listed as a special report. I really don't know.
On the actual agenda item is where the recommend is.
I know, I'm looking at, I see it, item M1, I see the rationale, the background.
You gotta go with the one that's public.
Okay, so the one that's online is the correct one, that we have, where we have a requested motion.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. I've made a comment on with the information I've requested. So you can call it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yo. So one opposed. only because it's gonna come back anyway, but you have all 5 board members, and you're gonna have a lot of further discussion about it. You might as well structure it in a way that it gets approved or not approved at the next meeting, but I have a concern that it'll get carried forward after that meeting, possibly. I mean,
Larry, is it safe, just so I'm following you, to say that
I'm not convinced I'm going to vote for it, number one, but that's
Okay.
that's not a question. That's not the question, because I can always just say no when you vote in November. I'm just not sure if there's enough prep work done for you to have the discussion that everyone will be comfortable in voting. But you have 3 members that have said that they're ready to go for it, so.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Go for it. It's my last meeting, by the way. 8 years. All right. Thank you guys very much. M2, update on the initiative to implement online courses.
That's Ed Service item, and as Dr. Vicker's coming up, she will be running our presentation, just to recognize that as we were beginning the analysis of this, we recognized that the board began work on this several years ago, going out and doing observations and looking at different districts, and so we want to recognize that we are quite aware that there's been some previous work done. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Fricker.
Thank you, Dr. Austin, members of the board. It is my privilege tonight to present on the work that has been done to develop distance learning programs for the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District. Having said that, there was a lot of work that has been done previous years, and we would like to capitalize on that work and then bring that work forward. There are a lot of elements to consider when you're looking at distance learning programs, a lot of research to conduct, and making sure that we involve all of our stakeholders throughout the entire process. This presentation tonight will include outlining some of the work that has been done, the scheduled work that is tentatively planned for the remainder of the school year, and then some data points to just demonstrate the interest level that the district has in this program. So, it's not advancing. Oh, I did. Hang on. Sorry.
I was afraid we'd have to go to another intermission.
Right. Just to outline some programmatic options that we have, we're looking at distance learning and blended learning. A distance learning program is a completely virtual program that is headed up by credentialed teachers, but all of the content, the video, the instructional components are listed or located online in a virtual environment for students. A blended learning program actually involves a combination of a classroom setting and virtual components that enhance the learning process. And that blended learning model is usually referred to as a hybrid model in some cases. In looking at a tentative outline of the projected timeline that we have displayed for the project this year, we're capitalizing on the work that has been done in previous years, and then putting that work in conjunction with the impact that the district currently has in terms of how many of our students are engaged in online or distant learning programs, and then looking at the course transcripts to see where those programs were taken as we validate those classes on our transcript. Moving forward, there was a steering committee that was established, and that steering committee looked in the research and development of online or distance learning programs in conjunction with vendors or selected corporations that could provide a solution for our district. The vendors have been scheduled to come on in and give a demonstration of their programs to see if it would meet the learning requirements that we have as a district in terms of quality control and measurability and accountability. A more expanded committee is in the final stages of formalization that would include our own instructional staff from all 3 of our high school sites and site leadership to evaluate those vendors and solution providers, and also go through mock courses to really look into the quality and the content that are in those classes and those solutions. Moving forward in the months to come, we are slated to have a technology and infrastructure needs assessment to make sure that we can actually house an online learning or distance learning program. Stakeholder surveys will be put out to assess the needs and interest levels from a variety of sources throughout the district. And then we are looking at board policy to make sure that the governance structures on the district side are in alignment with the online program or the distance learning movement. From that point on, the expanded committee will look at all of that information and render a suggestion for a possible solution or a vendor selection at that time. Once that happens, we're going to go to our instructional staff again, look to see who is really interested in being an online educator, and then what training needs that they would have as we continue the planning moving forward at the end of the school year. Why would we want to explore a distance learning program? Well, in looking at our transcripts and evaluating where our students are going and how they're taking an online class, currently we noticed that a lot of our students were enrolled in the Orange County Department of Ed Pacific Coast Highway Summer School classes, our Pacific Coast High School Summer School classes, and in 2013, 173 courses were taken through the OCDE program. That continued to escalate up to 2015, where 545 classes were actually taken and put on our transcripts by students who were enrolled in the OCDE program.
Do we have a breakdown as to which high school? I mean,
which students are
where the students are in high school? Do we know?
We did pull the transcripts, and I don't have the exact number for you this evening, but we do have a breakdown of which schools sent applications in.
Just curious if it's a trend on one campus more than another.
Can you also add what courses they're taking? Because
you're moving right.
I think there are multiple. Oh, go ahead.
You're going.
Oh,
I don't have it in front of me.
No problem. No problem. The bottom blue bar is just a representative indicator of where students are taking additional online classes at community colleges. And you'll notice the bottom blue bar on the graph, there is just an average from 2013 to 15, about 35 students are taking courses at a community college. Moving forward, when we actually looked at the Orange County Department of Ed Pacific Coast Highway Summer School program, we can break down and see exactly what classes they are actually taking. You can see that 50% of the students are indicating that they are selecting classes in world history and U.S. history segments, and that was followed by government and economics. Only 10% selected classes in English and 4% in geometry. So a total of 86% of our students are selecting courses in the social science area of interest.
So that's my question.
Yeah.
Why?
Students select classes in social science for a variety of reasons.
I wasn't necessarily expecting you to answer it this, but I think, why is it that 85% of our students that are taking online courses at a rate of going from 173 to 545 are taking social studies classes? I think there's multiple variables as to why, and this is nothing against us wanting to get into this line of delivery for our students. I teach in a hybrid program at Pepperdine. I've used 4 different platforms. I get it. But I also don't want to dismiss this statistic, because clearly there's something happening, whether it's the ways in which the pathways work out, something about A through G, something about when and how we offer courses, could be even the faculty. I don't know what it is, but this is very telling that you have this number of students, this percentage.
Actually, it's telling by the schools too, because the comment made earlier about the athletics may play into this completely, particularly when you see economics and government. You're a high school senior, you're doing a sport, you don't want to have a 6th period or whatever, so you get out of not taking both semesters of the track by taking econ or government. I'm not sure about the history ones, because they're usually junior courses or whatever, but those at least play into
world history is sophomore, isn't it?
World history is freshman or sophomore, and U.S.
And US
history
history
is
is
junior.
usually
And some of them are kids who are STEM-focused kids who want to take an engineering and a physics, and they can't get it all in because they also play an instrument or they play soccer. And then some kids because they probably think it's easier. It's probably both. There's multiple reasons. And there's no sciences because you can't take lab science online, is that right? So there's no science offered. We don't allow that? Or it doesn't exist?
It depends on what the Pacific Coast High School offers, and the forms that students submit through our counseling office and then down to the district office of what is approved.
We had
There's no
0 students, right? We did not have any students in science.
And that was their choice, or just it doesn't exist, or we don't
We did
allow?
not approve those classes.
We didn't approve it. We don't approve foreign language? There's no Spanish or anything?
No, we had, if you take a look at it, we had world language, we had 27 over the course of from 9 to 24 to 27 in world language.
Okay.
I didn't mean to derail it, but I think it's an important point.
Right. And we'll get those numbers to you per high school. I'll put it in the update.
So in looking at the trend, we do have an increased need of our students who are desiring to take an online or distance learning class. And when we look forward,
I bet you to climb up there and just work it from the... Get those numbers for you.
As an aside, I mean, it's, as a history major in college, it's sad that the social sciences are the one that we're doing online, and all due respect to Dr. Colados and his four different platforms of hybrid learning. I don't think you get the same out of an online class as you get in an in-class.
And we have some,
Unless you take my
and we have some great teachers teaching those classes, and kids aren't learning the same amount of information. They're just not learning well.
Well, I think that's what Dr. Fricko is going to talk about now, just the quality of the program, of why we want to take it back.
so with the increased need, thank you, within the increased need of students wanting to take online or distance learning classes, we feel very responsible for making sure that the quality of the programs that they take are equitable to the quality that they would see in the classroom setting. We've come up with 3 main areas for criteria in terms of looking for a solution that would meet our needs and what criteria we would want those solutions to hold to. And these 3 areas will be broken out into slides of their own in a second. But the first one is high quality programs, innovative applications, and then a secured infrastructure or environment to house those classes. So when we look at a high-quality distance learning program, we want to make sure that the instructor of record is a high-quality or a professional certified teacher, and our teachers are some of the best around. So we also want to make sure that the content that the students have access to are aligned to the California state standards, and they are also very rigorous, and they meet the UCCSU and NCAA requirements for certification. Moving on to the program application, quality control measures for the assessment portion and the integrity of the classes rises to the top, in addition to servicing the needs of all of our students, and that would include our EL students and our special education students alike, providing a flexible environment where they can pace themselves throughout the course, and also providing a variety of device implementation so that the courses can be seen on iPads, Chromebooks, laptops, etc. And finally, we want to ensure that there's a protected environment or platform for the courses to sit on, making sure that we provide a flexible program for our students and families, and we have a plethora of IT support to manage the back-end system, but that we also adhere to the security and privacy assurance measures outlined by the state of California. And finally, we understand that this project is very large in terms of the scale, the scope, and the nature of what we're trying to accomplish, and that it's going to involve a variety of our stakeholders and input and collaboration throughout the district. But we truly believe that we can develop a world-class product that will create additional opportunities and flexibilities for our students and our staff. So at this time, I would just open up the presentation to any questions that you may have.
Is there an element of this whole conversation we just had about the electrical panels and electrical capacity if we all of a sudden create an entirely new online program and have students from all over Southern California and beyond?
Well, I think it depends on somewhat of the model. You know, when you have a blended or a hybrid model, you'd be having some of it would be in our classrooms, you know, in our traditional brick and mortar settings, as well as some students that will be working on these programs, you know, possibly not only during the day, but at night, at home. Sure. So there's the advantage of not only our devices, but the students who have their own devices, and I think that's what Dr. Frichter was referring to in terms of multiple platforms, multiple access points, not only from traditional computers to mobile devices. You know, the kids now are so engaged in terms of mobile computing.
More of a network issue than it is.
Right.
Yeah.
But those are always considerations.
If I could share, so at Pepperdine in the teacher ed program, we have a 60-40 split, meaning 60% face-to-face, 40% online. And then this year we've changed it to 75 face-to-face and 25 online. We actually went in the other direction for a variety of reasons. USC went the opposite model, and USC went 100% online, distance learning. And it's interesting. It's kind of like FedEx or UPS. I think both models can work, but they're different. I mean, the package will get there, Malcolm.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just making sure where you're going.
Sure.
buddy.
I could imagine us doing both. I could imagine us having a distance learning where we have students from, frankly, all over California potentially taking classes with us. And then I could also imagine a hybrid model where maybe once a week or twice a week you actually meet face-to-face, and the other time you're online. What this raises, and this happens to us a lot as faculty, is so what does that load look like now? And how does my experience either as a professor or a teacher now shift? And how am I going to be compensated for what amount of work? Our traditional measures of compensation are very clear by days of the year and minutes and contract. Now all of a sudden you have, hybridity, you have so I'm excited to hear about the faculty. I'm excited to hear what they think, but I also just want to raise the issue that it's...
Hybridity.
Is that a real word? Did I coin that?
You got it.
I think you got it.
Good.
Hybridity.
I like it. I'm going to write an article now and use it. That way it'll be mine.
Platform number 5.
And one last thing. So we've used Blackboard, we've used Courses, we've used Sakai, and now we're on Adobe Connect. So in the last 6 years, so I would be curious to hear what we're looking at and how it plays out, and I'm excited. So, all hard questions, but it's exciting.
Okay.
I still feel like I get frustrated. I admire the kids that want to do this for the right reasons because they want to work ahead and they have a passion for something. But I don't like kids doing it because it's easier. I don't like it. It makes me upset that kids are missing out on some great teaching, and that the kids that you can go through, never take a history class in a classroom. And I feel like you're missing out on a great education and maybe are not discovering something that you would have a passion for. And I don't have an answer for it. I don't know if we can say you can do this once, or you can do it twice, or you can do it and your counselor has to approve it. You're not doing it so you can only take 4 classes your senior year, but you're doing it because you really are interested in marine biology and environmental science, and you want to take them both your senior year, whatever it is. Does that make sense? I just feel like I get the revenue generating part and keeping the money here, but I just feel like at some point you have to have some discretion over what goes on.
Yeah. Well, for me, the genie's out of the bottle. The horse is out of the barn. Whatever I can think of it.
It's hybridity.
12 after 10 at night. So for me, it's a qualitative issue. I know the kind of quality that this district is capable of. I can't vouch for Pacific Coast Highway High School or whatever it's called.
It has a nice view, I hear.
I hear. It sounds like an Eagles song. So that's why we had this conversation, Tony. We had, I think I even sent it to staff. It was like in 2010 we were talking about this, about the concern, about that our kids have been, we had kind of taken control out of the district's hands when our kids would go to Elko or they would go to Harbor and heaven only knows what.
What did it mean to have a diploma from our district, depending on how many courses?
But now at least you're going to have Mr. X from our school district teaching.
That's what I mean. I want these people to have that control. And then, as Tony pointed out, then it's a Don and John project to figure out, well, how do you compensate for that? How do you, because it's I don't know whether it's a square peg, round hole, but then can all of a sudden she have 75 kids? Not that you're high
Yes.
school.
No, I'm just joking.
No.
No, I think you guys are all hitting on good points. I just want to bring it back to tonight is just our introduction, and I've talked to Kim and Ed Services. We plan to have an update or a next step or incremental information on this topic at every single board meeting from now through the end of the year. Even if it's a short one, sometimes there'll be big steps, sometimes it'll be little. We're bringing in the associations because now it's time to start saying, okay, now let's look at what this could look like. Because like you said, it can go a million different directions. Parts of it are negotiable, and we'll do that work. There's a lot of parts to this, but that's why we're trying to get in front right now.
On the flip side, we could argue it's a non-negotiable not to go, meaning we have to. So while there may need to be negotiations about what this looks like and how we do it right and how we compensate, at the rate at which we're losing students, if we don't either change policy and or we've already expressed an interest in doing this, then we're going to be having conversations about losing jobs and losing. So I actually am excited about the direction we're going, and I think it's important to put it in context. It's not about if, it's how.
Is it then a policy discussion where we talk about restricting students?
Luckily, I've been in my last 3 districts. I've helped put this in place, so I've got some experience with this one too. The pieces in the order in which they come in, there's a complete system to it, and one of those systems is the policy piece. Well, the policy piece, the approval piece, we have the negotiated piece, we have the systems piece, and by the way, systems requirements are almost nothing. You can run these programs on your cell phone. Okay, so that is not a big issue. We'll want to make sure we have bandwidth for kids who are hitting it here, but really that is not a big barrier. Then we're going to have to talk about price per ports, and a port is a connection. We'll do all this technical stuff. We'll bring you more stuff. We will spend a whole meeting on talking about what a port is. So we really want to bring everyone along. But there is a way to do this that's tried and true. When we're talking about MOUs, we're not going to start with scratch. We're going to bring in 4 or 5 of things that other people have done and said, how do we feel about starting here? There's a system.
Well, it is exciting.
As excited as you could be at 10:15. All right.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
I'm a CNI dweeb.
Thank you, Dr. Ricker. All right. Moving on. We are moving on to N1. And we have a speaker. But if you like, we can delay it till after the...
We need to take a break.
Do you need a recess? Good evening. I'm so glad to hear the conversation about online since Dr. L and I lived it for years during summer school. We won't go there. Happy days are here again. I mean, really, I can't believe how many times I get to come up here and be excited because most everybody else seems a little pissed off. But am I not allowed to say that?
You're allowed to say anything in your 3 minutes, but I might have to recess you.
Okay, because
they'll buzz it out when it gets shown.
they
on
will.
television.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Lewis said
This is
on
not
TV.
part of my 3 minutes. Wait a minute. Before you, Dr. Bose and Mrs. Cano have brought to you an employee retirement incentive that we have not seen the likes of in my world ever. Yes, we've had them before. They've been minor amounts of money to be an incentive for someone to tell you that they would like to retire, that they are going to retire. This one's monstrous. Wish I could take advantage of it. If I had stayed here long enough tonight, I might be able to. But what it really says to our employees is that you value all those years of service that they've given you. That yes, this is just a little push of money for you to seriously think about if you're able to retire. We have a nice group of people who are seriously considering it or had already been looking at it, and this has helped open the door wider for them. And tomorrow evening at afternoon at 4:15 in the community room, Dr. Bose and I have a meeting scheduled to meet with those people and steer them in the right direction because as I say to them constantly, I don't retire you. The district doesn't retire you. Social Security and CalPERS and you retire you. So thank you so much. I'm so hoping you will approve this ERI.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Bose.
Great. We would like to thank Mrs. Lewis and the CSCA team for being constructive partners in developing this program. And I need to introduce Attachment B, which is the side letter agreement that the district and CSCA have come to in support of the resolution. There are copies available for the audience on the back table. And I'd like to pass these to board members now. And this is a program that would allow approximately 95 employees, CSCA represented, who are over the age of 55 and have provided at least 15 years of service to the district, to take advantage of a retirement incentive program with 2 different windows. One of them occurring by December 31st, whereby a qualifying employee would receive a one-time payment of $15,000, or by June 30th, whereby a qualifying employee would receive a one-time payout of $12,500. The program has a $300,000 cap, which would allow 20 full-time employees, and this has been a very nice partnership with the CSCA team. So the motion I would request be amended to also include adoption of Attachment B.
Does anybody have any questions?
No.
All right. Can someone
I'm moving that the Board of Education adopt Resolution Number 8, 2015-16 with Attachment B, giving staff the authority to offer an early retirement incentive program for California School Employees Association, Palos Verdes Chapter 1, 2, 3, classified employees as presented.
Second.
Discussion? I would just point out to the public that this was a negotiated agreement. So it's something that's negotiated between the district and the represented employees. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, thank you. Oh, we got another hour if you'd like to stay.
They're all packing.
All right. We're moving on to resolution, number N3, approving or the discussion of Microsoft Learning Solutions IT Academy. I'm guessing this is a trend item.
This is. As you know, we are a district that uses a wide range of Microsoft products, both administratively and academically and instructionally. This resolution is to approve the extension of the subscription license that we have with Microsoft. In the resolution, it identifies the purchasing vehicle, which is the California Microsoft Strategic Alliance, which is referred to as CAMSA. It's a contract that they have with Software House International, and this agreement includes licensing for things such as the Office suite of applications that many of us use on our desktop computers, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, so forth. It's also our district's email system, the Office 365 platform that we are using with our students and our faculty, as well as the ability for students, staff, and family members to download 5 free copies of this. So this is an extension of our existing agreement. We do it annually each year. We have added a couple items to the agreement for managing the system with a product called Microsoft Azure. So we bring it to you tonight for approval to extend that.
Any questions?
I noticed that Windows 10 is not part of that. Is that?
Those are included. So any of the licensing upgrades from the whole Windows platform. So we're
not that I would advise. Okay. Any other discussion? All right, let me get to where I move that the board adopt resolution number 6, 2015/16, which approves the purchase of the Microsoft Learning Solutions IT Academy service subscription licenses, Microsoft Windows 7 software, Microsoft Office Professional Plus software, Microsoft Office 365, 365 Pro Plus, Windows Server Standard Edition, and Windows Server License and Software Assurance, Enterprise Mobility Suite, and Microsoft Azure pursuant to the California Microsoft Strategic Alliance contract with Software House International for 12 full calendar months at a cost of $69,280.80.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item O.
Item O is a resolution for the synthetic turf for Point Vicente, Silver Spur, and Vista Grande elementary schools. At the last board meeting, I brought to you several different options on playground surfacing. The synthetic turf was one of those options. We presented the options to you based on the 3 playgrounds at Vista Grande so that we can get a sampling of what it would cost to resurface 3 of the playgrounds. However, we looked at the other schools, and what we tried to do was, there are quite a few of the schools that would be considered worse, I mean, on the most severe list, but what we tried to do, rather than just do one school, is pick one of the severe playgrounds from 3 different schools. And so that's why tonight you have Point Vicente, Silver Spur, and Vista Grande. So the total cost of the synthetic turf replacement is just about $178,000. This does not include the entire project. The entire project would include replacing parts of the playground equipment to make sure that they're safe and they would last many more years. And the cost of the equipment is just about $29,000, and that would be with Miracle Recreation. That does not require going out to bid. And the demolition for the equipment repair work would be done by our current support contractor at a cost of about just under $24,000. And so I wanted to talk to you and present to you the total project and make sure everyone understands that it's more than just the turf replacement. However, the turf replacement is the greatest cost, and we do have a piggybackable bid with Weisburn.
See, Lydia's making up words too now. Piggybackable is along with hybridity. Okay, we're gonna co-author this piece.
It's the high bidder. Never mind. I can't even get it out. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I have 2 questions. At one point when we were looking at pictures, I don't know if it was actually of these 3 sites or there were some others included, but there seemed to be a very wide range of space that probably at one point was used but was no longer used. Did we actually decrease any space at all?
No,
or?
Those big, vast spaces were around the swings, and swings require a greater fall distance than the climbing equipment. So unless we're considering removing swings, we are not reducing the square footage.
So that was one question. The second question doesn't necessarily apply directly to this, but I'm thinking about the shade structures for the solar. I wonder if the minute we all of a sudden put a huge shade structure over land that currently is probably grass in some cases, I don't know, that we may need to go back and reconsider. We're not going to want, 100 yards of dirt, meaning nothing's going to grow it. So I'm laying it out there as something to consider when we go back to the other conversation. We try to think about all the costs, but it may be something like pavers or something, but I can't imagine we don't necessarily need synthetic turf that is, if you fall off of monkey bars, you're going to be okay. But it does seem like something that we might want to think about on the separate. So I'm just raising it now because I thought about it. That's it for me.
Anybody else? All right, Lydia, maybe you can address a couple of the concerns that when you have a project like this that has some intermoving parts, that it's part of the whole picture. We're talking about a piece of it with the piggybacking, but when I look in the whole project, maybe you can talk a little bit about how that works contracting-wise.
Well, we have multiple vendors, and so each vendor would require their own agreement or PO if it's not over the bid limit. And the work that each of the vendors does is different. One, Miracle Recreation, is just supplying the materials. And because Miracle does not do the labor themselves, they will recommend a vendor to do the labor portion. And the KYA only does the turf, and so you're looking at 3 pieces of what we're packaging as a project. They don't have to be done together, but
all 3 parts are piggybacked on the same contract with Weisburn?
No, only the turf is piggybacked on Weisburn.
Right, and so when I look at it, sometimes there's a concern about whether you're piecemealing.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't consider this piecemealing because it was already presented to us by 3 different vendors. Piecemealing would be, say there isn't a piggybackable bid, and one vendor is capable of doing the entire project, but they say, hey, we can help you out here. Do you hire my buddy over here, and he'll do part A, and my buddy over here will do part B. But that's not the case here because we don't have one vendor that can do all of it.
And the idea being that you have to go out to bid if you go to a project of a certain threshold.
Correct.
So the idea of people in the past, ways trying to get around the threshold and having to go out to bid is they would break it into parts and call it piecemealing. The courts have said and the contract and laws have said you can't piecemeal something that's logically one project. But in this case, because you have different vendors, we have the supplier being a couple of our suppliers actually are the ones we have contracted now currently for doing general work and so on. And you've gone through and met, and I see in the board report, you've talked to the legal counsel who's prepared this and had all this discussion. We're comfortable that we're following all the applicable laws and contracting and practices.
And the bid threshold for materials and equipment is about $86,000. So Miracle at $28,000, $29,000 is well under. Labor is a lower threshold, it's $15,000, and that's why the vendor that Miracle was recommending, we didn't have anything in place with them, and so the discussion was with Miracle was, do you have any objection to us having our own vendor do the work? It didn't matter to them, and so because when we hire our support contractors, we actually go through the full bid process at that time. We have them in place to do these smaller jobs, and so we were able to make it work. Now, had we not had a support contractor in place, what would be difficult is if we used the vendor that Miracle was providing, and we split that up into 3 small pieces, that would absolutely be piecemealing and would not be allowed.
Okay, good, I appreciate the explanation. Any other questions? All right. Can someone make a motion, please?
I have it. I move that the board adopt resolution number 7, 2015-16, acquisition of synthetic turf for Point Vicente, Silver Spur, and Vista Grande Elementary Schools using piggyback bid number 2, Weisburn Unified School District from Fund 14 Deferred Maintenance in the amount of $177,876.11.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
When's this going to be done? Is it going to be done soon, or?
We'll have to work on scheduling it with the schools. If they can do, if it's going to depend on the schools, if they can do without one play yard while the work gets done, it's possible to start earlier. If not, it would probably be done over winter break.
Great,
hopefully we
thank you.
can get something going over winter break.
All right. Well, let's bring it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Consent calendar. Malcolm, anything off the consent calendar?
Nothing.
Tony?
Yes, P2B, P2C,
Uh-huh.
and P5A.
Okay. Linda?
Nothing.
And I'm going to take off P2D. All right, so can someone make a motion, please, to approve P1A, P2A, P2EFGHIJ, P3AB, P4B?
So move. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, Tony, P2B.
So I'm sorry I didn't call on these earlier. I meant to, but they're more suggestions than anything else. So on P2B, this agreement with this Sunburst Digital, this Type to Learn, what I wanted to highlight was, and this is going to bleed into P2C, is it seems to me that schools are actually picking and choosing certain kind of additional curriculum enhancements. Is that correct? Meaning this program, this software, this?
Well, if I could, you want to
Sure.
address that question. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 of our schools using Type to Learn.
Sure.
And well, I'll stick with B.
Okay. So do the other 2 just choose not to do it?
I think right now, at this point, I haven't spoken to the other 2 schools,
Sure.
but it's their choice, but I can follow up with that.
So I'll go ahead and include Excel on this too. So, and the Excel Learning, which my kids have used, I can't remember if it was at Lenata Bay or PBIS or both, but they use it a lot. And this happens to be for one particular school site, correct?
Because they're using Title I funds for that one.
Okay, so, but in general, are all the other schools using iExcel Learning?
No.
So here's what I'm wondering, right? So we have some sites that are using it and others aren't. Some are using different funding, that's fine. But I wonder if when it comes to us, to the board to approve the contracts, wouldn't it be interesting to kind of, before that happens, to let the schools know, hey, I just wonder amongst, especially the elementary schools, they know that others are using different programs? And 2, is there any economy of scale of saying, hey, and there may not be, but I'm just wondering if there's any more systemic way to try to get our head around what's happening, especially as we're coming out of this kind of Common Core pilot phase into a more agreed upon, here's our curriculum, this is what we do.
I asked Joanna and Kim those questions all the time, because some of the questions that come up from the people that fund this, some of these are site funds, some of these are donations from, and the first thing is that in terms of which are approved and what the schools want is, there's a software list that we provide back to them to say, if you are interested in, someone says, hey, I want a keyboarding program, I want a math program, I want a reading program. What we tell them is these are what some of the other schools are using, and this is, we can get potentially economy of scale purchasing power with that. The other thing is in terms of, there's different elements based on the school needs for their school population that they feel that some of them are better fits for their students. So those are 2 areas that we look at consistently, and then the software list through our process that we've adopted with Dr. Culverhouse's department is sending that information out to all. It's posted on our website. These are all the approved things. These are things that are pending, so that the teachers, that principals can look through and say, and have that conversation to help vet some of the other things that they're exploring that they may or may not have at their school.
And just that has been a gap, that when you use the word systemic,
Sure.
that has been a gap in our district of schools. We'll get the request, and we will immediately put out there what other schools are using it. That's why I know how Type to Learn. With the iExcel, it's using it within our Title I program and our Title I schools. But then the way we have our system set up on approval now, after the board meeting, whatever is approved software-wise, we then push that out to all the schools, so we know that it's been approved.
Sure, but
So
there's
that they
also an
can-
equity issue, right?
Yes.
So on one hand, it could be like from Trent's office, I imagine, like, hey, listen, these contracts have been looked at. We've talked about the privacy issues. These are good to go if you'd like them. It's not a curricular issue, right? Meaning, hey, if we, once again, Larry has said this for years, if we have a unified school district, I wonder where the level is at which we want people to have the choice to be able to choose curriculum that helps their students. We also don't want schools to be able to just start supplementing curriculum in ways that, because they have the capacity to do so, because the list is now bigger, but the list wasn't necessarily for curricular reasons, it was for other kind of vendor-approved reasons. I'm trying to get at that, and I like the fact that you're acknowledging systemically maybe we haven't done it in the past, but.
No, we have not. And I think that's what I'm saying is that's what we're looking at, the system. The fact that we have an approval process in place right
Sure.
now was very important for us to look at that.
Sure.
And then looking at the, like, when it comes down to the type to learn, another example of that is that we have one school that has a tutor that comes in for 4th and 5th graders in the morning, and the PTSA pays for that, and the students come in for some additional learning with that type to learn program.
Sure.
So there is still a lot of different schools that are doing different programs, but I feel like we have a better handle on it, but we're not just there yet.
So I'm encouraging us to get a better handle. So with that,
Well, I think we are getting a better handle.
That may be, and I'm not doubting that, but you can see how the approved list doesn't mean I have a limit on how many I can use or how I use them or when I use them, and that's where I could see one school's ability to purchase multiple supplemental programs and others not.
Right, and as you know, different elementary schools have those different needs too.
Yeah, I'm not so much worried about the need as the
Right,
wants.
I hear you.
Yeah, okay. So with that, I move approval of B2B and P2C.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
P2D is me. It's very brief. I appreciate the bonding you get when you send a team to an outside event. But I worry when we have these kinds of events that there's less supervision than there is on a campus. There's just a level of risk that's higher when you have a team traveling someplace than when they're going from the school on a bus and coming back on the same bus. So it's hard for me to understand why we'd have an overnight trip to Arcadia, California. The last time I checked, Arcadia is about 45 minutes to an hour away. Maybe 2 hours because it's a Friday night. But it just seems odd, and you don't need to go ask anybody or anything else. It just seems odd to have an overnight trip to a very close location. I would err on the side of not having these kinds of, having a trip to a close-in location because of the increased risk to the district. That's just one person's opinion, and with that, I move approval.
Especially when I misread it originally. I thought it was over school break.
On a Friday.
But it's during the school, so I would just echo that.
So I move approval.
I will second, and then on this discussion side, I will just add that I had the same thought on both sides, that what an amazing experience it is when a team actually does get to go and participate together, and the kind of growth and maturity that can happen when you stay overnight, and perhaps it's a 8 a.m. game in the morning or what have you. And then similarly, I was Google mapping and thinking, wow, this is interesting that they're doing it overnight this close. So I echo both of Larry's comments.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Tony, P5A.
Same issue I brought up earlier. I'm actually literally, as sad as this sounds, I'm actually so confused right now between Aries and Edmo, like all the different tools that we're using. I shouldn't be. I should know them. My wife's not happy to hear me say this right now, but I just do not understand why there is still an issue in our district that there isn't one approved method or platform that teachers use. I work at a university, I teach. Right now we're using Adobe Connect. I am not able to go back and use Blackboard because I don't like the transition, or I still have some documents there, or it's comfortable. I just think we are at a point where unless it's a a bargaining issue, unless there's some kind of HR reason, let's choose what we use, and teachers use it, parents know how to use it, the kids know how to use it, and it shouldn't change from elementary, middle, or high school. Or if it does, then let's distinguish. Elementary's gonna do this, middle's gonna do that. But I'm kind of done with it. So that's my point. If I haven't been
Aries
clear.
is the mothership.
Then the ships that are on the mothership, I want to choose what they are, and I want us to move
But we
forward.
wouldn't consider Aries what we talked about earlier.
No, Aries is a student information system.
There's a component on Aries where you can post things.
Yeah, there is.
It's a
But
little
I
bit
think
cumbersome, but you can-
what some of the discussion we're going to have with our subcommittee is that there's different goals that we're trying to accomplish. Collaboration tools versus a grade book versus transcripts and information that we're sending to the state. So you're right. There is a mothership, and then there are support programs. The first company that does it all in one will dominate the market. We've had that conversation before, but I think we're hearing the same frustration from our parents, from our stakeholders, and I think we're also hearing that from some of our faculty that they would like some guidance and some direction. So
my issue isn't with Aries. I'm
No,
using this as an opportunity to make the point. Our students and parents and even the teachers should not have to go to 4 or 5 different places to figure out. And along with that, while I'm at it, we need to come to some general agreement on what is expected of a teacher to post or not post, and that might be also a bargaining issue. But we're at the point now where we can't just keep going on as how we've been doing it. So we need to kind of evolve in our technology and our use of it and how we use it as an educating tool. And so I wanted to use this opportunity at 11 o'clock at night to make sure that I just don't think there's any reason not to make some decisions and move forward on these issues as a district. With that, I move approval.
I would note, and under discussion, that it is another one of the contracts that has our addendum that they signed, so I appreciate you continuing to work on that angle and working to protect as well as we can the privacy of our students and users. Any other comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, item O is an information item only. Item R is adjourned.
Malcolm, when I text you